And we're live. Da-da-da. Happy Friday afternoon, everybody. What is up? As usual, I'm trying to do a little house cleaning before I actually get completely rolling here. And we're going to talk about some absolute retards. And a couple different types of them, actually. So I'm getting all my video together. Again, another pop-up live stream. You guys know lately I'm not rolling on a schedule. I'm just rolling on whenever I can get the time. So that's what we're doing. Got done teaching a forklift class earlier, and we're going to hang out. So let me make sure all my other stuff's done here. All right, that should be groovy. All right. I do believe everything is up. So, anyway, what is it? Last week, or no, it was this week. New York put the National Guard into their subways, along with more police officers, because of crime. People getting robbed, people getting, assaulted, all that kind of stuff. They were actually searching anybody coming onto the subways, pat downs. I mean, they stopped just south of probably a TSA screening. Going to keep everybody safe. Well, here's the problem with government. Government can't keep you safe. And as a matter of fact, what we'll see in this is if you dare defend yourself, the government's more than likely going to come after you. There's something there that ain't matching up. So I was kind of looking how I wanted to start this. Let's go ahead and listen to the press conference right after this happened. Because that's kind of the way I found out about it. I actually saw it on a post on X. So let's listen to this. And then we'll bounce to video of the event itself, because there's cell phone footage of it. Good God, everybody these days. We'll pull out a cell phone and record everything. So glad I didn't grow up like that. There would be so much blackmail evidence on me, it wouldn't even be funny. So let me play this. We're going to listen to this. And we might listen to it straight through and then come back and hit a couple points. Let's try to do that if I can keep myself from stopping the damn video.
A lot going on. Detectives, preliminary, just understand that this incident just occurred a short while ago. There's a lot going on. Detectives are on scene, still interviewing witnesses and still gathering evidence. But this afternoon at about 4:45 p.m., I want to bring you on a northbound A train.
Little laggy. I'm sorry, guys.
We had a 32-year-old
Hopefully we can get through
male
without going too stupid.
Enter the
anyway,
train,
what up, perps?
We believe at the Nostrand Avenue station. This 32-year-old gets onto the train, the doors close, and the train starts moving. As the train starts moving, he's approached by a 36-year-old male who was already on the train. This 36-year-old male was described by multiple witnesses as being aggressive and provocative towards the 32-year-old that just got on. Words were exchanged between the two. And during the words, it became physical. And also, the 36-year-old at one point displayed either a knife or a razor blade toward the 32-year-old. The 36-year-old put that sharp object down. Words were still exchanged. It became physical again. And at some point, the 36-year-old removed a firearm from his jacket. He then took that firearm, started walking toward the 32-year-old who was on the train, yelling at him, walking toward him in a menacing way, and it became physical again between the two. During this physical confrontation, That gun, we believe, was removed from the 36-year-old by the 32-year-old, and the 32-year-old fired multiple shots, striking the 36-year-old. As this was occurring, the train pulled into the Hoyt-Skirmhorn station, which is right behind me. It's very important that it be known there were multiple police officers in this station, just feet away from when this train pulled in, that actually heard the shots and were on scene within seconds, providing medical assistance, requesting an ambulance, and gathering witnesses.
Frag out. What's up, my brother? Hey, how's the new shop coming, man? I haven't seen any posts in the last little bit.
He's currently in surgery
What's up,
in critical condition, and the 32-year-old is currently with detectives. Who's speaking? I'll pass it off to the chairman and CEO of the MTA, John O'Liebenow, for a few words.
You know, I sometimes say that the subway is a sacred space where we practice the world's greatest experiment in tolerance and diversity every day, so people can live their lives in New York, the greatest city in the world. So when something like this happens, when you bring a gun on the train and you start a fight, it's not right, and it is absolutely outrageous. That's what happened here. Someone brought a gun on the train and started a fight. It's why we need to keep fighting against guns. It's why the mayor is trying to take guns off the street and had some success. It's why the governor is fighting these crazies who say guns should be able to be carried everywhere in the public space. Get rid of the guns. The victims here, as the chief said, appears to be the aggressor. But the real victims are the people I saw in those videos who are having a harrowing time because they're on a train with somebody with a gun. Even if he's fighting somebody else, they're afraid for their lives. They're just trying to go about their lives. So get rid of the guns. People want to have disagreements. That's going to happen in life. But when a disagreement, a gun's involved, we can't live with it. We can't live with it. And I appreciate the mayor's commitment to getting rid of guns and Governor Hochul's support and her effort to fight, again, this craziness, these ideas out there that people should be allowed to carry guns everywhere. The subway is no place for guns. I got to say to Chief Kemper and the NYPD, thank God for omnipresence. Thank God there were police officers on the platform.
What's up, Bob? What's happening, my brother?
Police officers from the precinct, from the neighborhood, who are inspecting.
I haven't seen his record yet.
Before what is apparently the gunman even got off the platform. This system is going to make
calling
us safer.
The victim the
but today
gunman.
We have to think about all those people who were impacted by this. And I just want to say that for all the passengers, we got to live our lives. We got to live our lives, but together we got to support everybody who's fighting back against guns. That's what's going to make the difference here.
Questions? Yeah, obviously we can't take, we'll only take a couple. Obviously it's an active investigation, so we're only going to be able to take a couple, and we'll get updates from DCPI on those questions that we can't answer. All right, so
yeah, we have so much to talk about in just a second.
Wow.
Wow, hold on. We are definitely going to talk about this.
So we have him. Detectives are still on scene. They're still interviewing witnesses, reviewing video, and obviously consulting with their partners in the Brooklyn DA's office. So, to be determined.
And we're going to watch the video of it too.
So there is a firearm that was recovered on scene. It's a small caliber firearm. In my opinion, it looks like a small semi-automatic, maybe a 32 or a 25. Don't hold me to it. But we didn't want to.
You want to bet it was a 380 bodyguard.
Part of a crime scene. So as far as their relationship, unknown. I don't believe they knew each other. I could, that's just.
Bart, what's up, my brother?
But we don't believe they knew each other.
I've got a Force Scientific plasma cutter, which is the table itself and the software is en route. the plasma
So
itself
the
is a
exact count,
hypertherm.
there were people in the car. The exact count to be determined, well over a dozen, 2 dozen. The train was moving when this started, and this incident was still continuing as the train pulled into this station and the doors opened. More than one.
Sounds like it was about 4 to 5 shots, I think, on the video.
So there were multiple witnesses on that train car that video recorded with their cell phones.
And I just got to say, Evan, just for clarity's sake, there are 34 cameras in the station, but the apparent shooter was apprehended
Again,
before he
he
even
keeps
reached
calling the
to got off
victim, the
bus.
one who defended himself, the shooter.
Last one.
Say it again. On that train car, no. Listen, we talk about this all the time. There's upwards of over 1,000+ cars right now.
Yeah, we're gonna look at it and talk about it, Bob.
So now we'll be
Because this
saying
whole
yes
situation's
by the end
screwy,
of the year.
but it
Listen,
sounds like an
I wanna
absolute
say
case
this.
to fuck
As
around and
many
find out.
witnesses as we have, we never have enough. So I'm urging anyone, if anyone else was on that train car in the station or has any information in relation to this incident, to call our Crime Stoppers hotline at 1-800-577-TIPS.
Well, we all know the more you fuck around, the more you find out. All right. So let me pause that. Let me make myself bigger here. So, what we have, according to them, and we'll look at the video in a second, is a subway with over 1,000 National Guard posted up in subways, with cops posted in the subways. You have a 32-year-old guy that gets on a train, and we'll see in the video, and there's an article I will breeze through. Sounds like he got on the train with his girlfriend. You have a 36-year-old guy who starts a verbal confrontation and just won't let it drop. From what we'll see on the video, you don't see the 32-year-old guy being aggressive, basically until it gets to the point where he has to defend himself. Or the way it starts, you don't know whether the 36-year-old was either going at him or going at the girlfriend. I'm sure that the front side of that video is a little bit edited. 36-year-old, I guess, displayed a knife. These two get in a confrontation, physical. Apparently, the girl stabbed the 36-year-old in the back, and that's on the video. It's kind of hard to tell because they blur shit out. 36-year-old guy gets up. 32-year-old guy moves back. 36-year-old guy grabs his jacket, grabs a gun out of his jacket. You can see that on the video, and approaches the 32-year-old. Now, the 32-year-old so far has just been defending himself the whole time. If this was a situation where the 32-year-old was the one who was the aggressor, they had plenty of time to break that confrontation up, and the 36-year-old could have just moved off, but it seems like he's always the one going at the other guy. So the 32-year-old, once the 36-year-old pulls the gun and walks at him, and you can see it on the video, you can hear the slide right, and he moves at the guy. 32-year-old somehow gets the gun and shoots the person attacking him a couple times. Sounds like one of the rounds went to the face. Props for that. So what it sounds like and what it looks like is a complete case of self-defense. This fucking idiot in the gray suit on this video was talking about the gun. He never blames the attacker. He calls the victim the shooter, and he's talking about the guns, and people shouldn't be allowed to carry guns everywhere. I will bet money, one, the dude had his gun in his jacket pocket. Let that sink in. We'll see that on the video. I will guarantee you this guy was already more than likely legally disqualified from carrying a firearm in the first goddamn place. The guys that brought the firearm to the confrontation was the aggressor, looks like all the way through. The guy who actually got the gun and did the shooting was the victim of the aggression and was defending himself. These assholes never talk about self-defense during that whole press conference. They call the aggressor the victim, and then they use victim for the other guy, and then they call the actual victim the shooter. You can't make this shit up. They talk about the cameras, and hey, there were police in the station. And look, if it's me, I'm carrying. The minute the dude initially showed me a knife, he's getting drilled. Hands down. It's happening. Period. You just brought a deadly weapon into a confrontation where I'm trying not to be the one up there being the aggressor. You bring a deadly weapon into it, you're getting tattooed, you're leaking, hate it for you. This dude actually had to take the other guy's gun and defend himself. And yeah, Bob, armed polity or armed society is a polite society. But all the cops do in this is blame the dude that was being attacked and then talk about the gun. They never go to, this guy was the aggressor, this guy was attacking, this other guy defended himself. They never break it down that way. Which is why it lit me up last night when I listened to this press conference. And if it hadn't have been for, I can't remember who I was watching when I saw this, but then the tactical turkey started up and then dark starts up. If it hadn't been for that, I would have started this up last night, and I was in a way lit up mood to cover this last night. So maybe a good thing I waited until the next day. What's up, Anthony Smith, my brother? All right, so let's do a screen share. Let's look at the actual cell phone video from this. And as usual, you don't get the entire confrontation. Where's it at? Is it this one? Hold on, give me just a sec. As usual, I got more tabs open than I got brain cells, which is like two. Which video was it that was a little bit better and wasn't so blurred? Because I want to, there's a part where the chick stabs the dude. Hold on, we might have to, I'll tell you what. We'll use the New York Post video on this. All right, so let me screen share this. Screen share. Okay, that's it. And let me make this bigger. So it's hard to see right here, but the guy in the hat up here is the one that looks like the aggressor. And see, there's a clip right there that's cut out. And you see the dude in the hat get back up. And then they cut it again, then you're back to this point. So I'm going to try to look some more and see whether I can find the unedited cell phone video. Because what it looks like, let me back that up a little bit. What it looks like is the guy's girlfriend's right here, the woman he was with, and he's sitting off to her side. And this dude's actually up in his face talking to the girl and him. Kurt, what's up, my brother? So with the blur right there, let me back that up again. Because when it blurred out, it's hard to see. But the chick actually stabs him in the back. Now remember, he's already displayed a knife. And then he's on top of the guy that she's with. And it's right before then. When he moves forward, he catches it in the back. It's hard to tell in the blur, but that's him reaching behind him. And you can hear him saying, "You stabbed me, you stabbed me." What he drops right there, I think, is the blade that came out of his back, or it was his blade, either way. But this is him getting his gun out of his fucking jacket pocket.
You stabbed me, right? You stabbed me, right? You stabbed me? You stabbed me? You stabbed me? I ain't doing nothing. No. You stabbed me?
You hear the gun right?
You stabbed me? You stabbed me?
No, I'm getting out. I'm getting out. I'm getting out. Get that all the way down, baby.
And you can hear him fighting in the background. I think the gunshots happen in just a second. Yeah, you're right, dude. It's a thug being a thug, man. When you see this with this dude up in this other dude's face, the other guy's sitting down, the other guy's not acting confrontational at that time. That's why I want to see the unedited stuff where you actually see the other guy get up and then start to try to maneuver. I definitely want to find the unblurred and there was one video a second ago. I'll try to find it and find it to where you could see the girl come up behind him and jab him in the back, basically almost a kidney shot, right side of his back. But again, he's already displayed a knife. It's hard to see in some of the blurs, but he's already displayed a knife. Then he's on top of the dude, swinging on him. He catches it in the back from her. Again, that's self-defense right there, or defense of others right there. When he pushes it to the point where he goes, gets his gun, racks it, and starts walking towards somebody. Hey, man, you've been fucking around this whole time. Now you finding out. That's just the way that is.
Let me out! Let me out! Let me out! Let me out!
So they're just starting to pull into the station right here.
Let me out!
And this chick's annoying. That's one shot. 2, 3, 4. So that's 4 shots. And I think the rest of this video is just people freaking running. Hold on, let me do this. This is another video. That's where he pulls. You can see the spot of blood forming right there. It's hard to tell because the knife is black handled. And that's her moving off right there. Hold on, wait a second. So the whole time he's saying, you stabbed me, he's talking to her. And then we'll read the article in a second, but I think this answers a little bit of a question here.
You stabbed me, right? You stabbed me, right? You stabbed me? You stabbed me? You stabbed me? I ain't doing nothing. No. You stabbed me? You stabbed me?
All right. So that's when you can see him. You stabbed me. You stabbed me. Of course, pulls the gun right slide, and he's walking at him. Yeah, Sam, this was yesterday. What's up, my brother? Everything's good, man. Hopefully everything's good with you. But yeah, this was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday at like 4 something in the evening. So about commuter time, everybody trying to head home. So let's flip over to this article. Let me stop that. What's up? Let's move over to the article. Damn, I can't tell what that is. That picture's a little blurry. But someone who's good at freaking identifying can probably point that out. But let's see, because I want to look at this article just a little bit. All right. So listen to the way this article's worded, even just the headline of it. So herring video shows men clashing moments before NYC subway shooting as frantic riders scramble for the doors. And then the baby's on here. Okay. This was 11:29 last night. So harrowing footage captured the violent clash between 2 men on a Brooklyn subway car. The sheer panic among commuters after one of the brawlers was shot aboard the rush hour train Thursday. Now, hold on. I got an itch. And an AR wrench makes a perfect back scratcher. Ah! Okay. Now I'm better. So, just off the rip, they don't mention that this one guy was being aggressive towards the other guy. They don't mention he was basically the aggressor throughout this entire event. All right. So the video shot by a passenger on a northbound A train corroborated earlier witness accounts shared with police showing one man provoking. So they do mention one man provoking. They don't mention necessarily who it was. Before another man, or provoking another man before at least 4 gunshots rang out in the crowded train as it pulled into the AC Hoyt Schimmerhorn, whatever you pronounce that, street station. So that's their description of the events. Again, and they use provoking another man. They don't mention the one that was being the aggressor in the situation was the one who actually brought the gun to that situation. It's just that the way they drag this out to try to avoid the fact that the guy who actually fired the gun, striking the other one, was the victim in the confrontation, not just somebody pulling a gun out and shooting wildly. And I like how they use agitator here instead of aggressor. Because they don't want to use attacker. They don't want to use aggressor. They want to try to use the mildest language they can use to describe the guy who was actually the one who started the confrontation, maintained the confrontation, turned that confrontation into a deadly event. They don't want to admit that was this dude. So police said the agitator, 36, was shot with his own gun when the other man, 32, managed to grab it away from him and open fire. if you wanted to be honest about this argument, one, you would call this dude the aggressor or the attacker. And that should have been in the first like paragraph of this article. Because most people are only going to read, and the way they do this, and they know it, most people are only going to read the headline and they may read a paragraph into it, but they're not going to take the time to get deeper into the argument or into the article. What's up, chessboard? What's happening, my brother? And again, they frame this as the agitator, not the attacker, not the aggressor. Agitator. Words matter and narratives matter. And all they're doing is just pushing this narrative versus giving you the straight facts behind what happened. Yeah, dude. Sam, there's no way you're getting me to go to New York, much less live in that fucking shithole. Especially not when I can defend myself when I'm attacked and the police blame me and call me the shooter. Oh, hell no. All right, man wearing the yellow hat, because there's a couple other things mentioned in this that I wanted to hit. Man wearing the yellow hat was berating a stranger moments after boarding the northbound train at the North Strand Avenue station. So, I mean, this dude just gets onto the train with this girl with him, and this other guy, the guy in the yellow hat, not the yellow shirt, the yellow hat, is immediately on his ass, being aggressive, trying to turn this into a physical confrontation. Video showed the man provoking another man before at least 4 gunshots rang out into the crowded train. And again, they're being dishonest about that shit, because what they're not telling you is that the guy who was provoking the other guy was the one who brought the gun, and the guy who was being attacked took the gun from his attacker and shot his attacker. We're getting really high up on the fuck around, find out scale here. Let's see. The agitator, again, with that agitator, instead of calling him the aggressor, instead of calling him the attacker, the agitator told his victim that he only likes black people, adding, "fuck your kind," as the confrontation became physical. Now, what I believe he is talking about, it's hard to tell what nationality the guy is in the yellow shirt. The girl, when you look at the video, looks like she's either white or a lighter skinned Hispanic. One of the two. She doesn't look like she's black, and this guy screaming all he likes is black people kind of tells me that he's a racist piece of shit that attacked someone because of their race. But hey, why mention facts? Before the shooting, the 2 strangers tussled for several minutes as others on the train pled for them to stop, noting there were children aboard. Yes. But the guy who is doing the attacking really doesn't give a shit about anybody's safety. The 36-year-old man was even stabbed by a woman as they sparred. The woman was said to be riding with the 32-year-old man on the train at the time of the incident, but she later fled. Police are now searching for her. So they're searching for a chick who tried to defend herself and the guy she was with. Obviously, they have the guy that did the attacking. He's got holes all in him. And last I heard, he was in critical condition. I'll beat you up, the 36-year-old wearing the black sweatshirt, yellow baseball cap, can be seen shouting in the other man's face, according to the video obtained by the Post. And I still don't know what pistol that is. Of course, we know it's semi-automatic. Hell, you can hear him racket slide. Maybe 380, maybe 32. It's kind of hard to tell, to get a complete size on it. Hold on, come on. The gun used in the shooting. Okay. You think you're going to beat up cops, he snarls? I have no idea what he means by that. Because this was the aggressor yelling at the other guy. You think, and you can hear it on the video, you think you're going to beat up cops? I don't know. Maybe this guy's nickname was Cops. I don't know. Yeah, Bob, I was, like I said earlier, I was thinking like a Ruger bodyguard. Just because if you see how many of those get confiscated from wannabe little drug gangbangers, it's really high on the list. I did a stream one night on civil asset forfeiture, and I hadn't had my channel up long. And guns that were forfeited and taken from so-called criminals and then transferred from the sheriffs of the police to the ATF. And Ruger bodyguards came up a lot. Or was it? No, it's the Smith & Wesson bodyguard and the Ruger something. I'm getting those two kind of backwards. So, hey, forgive me, fire me. What do you want? Vanessa Kitty, what's up, my sister? Oh, shit, Vanessa. Hopefully you get through your VA appointment quick, darling. Because trust me, I wasn't a vet. Haven't been a vet. A lot of my family are vets. A lot of my friends are vets. I've been to plenty of VA clinics, and all of them have sucked donkey balls. So I feel for you. Ruger LCP. Yeah, maybe that's what it is, Barton. I was getting bodyguards. LCPs were up on that list too. I need to go back and find that stream and pull some of my resources and update them and maybe do another stream like that. All right, Chess, I'll check it in just a second, brother. All right, let's get back. Let me roll some more down in this article, see where there's anything else. Oh, get this. So woman off camera chimes in. He thinks you're a migrant. He thinks you're an immigrant, seemingly referencing the rowdy migrant mob who were caught on camera pounding a pair of cops. That explains that comment. So this dude thinks that this other guy is a migrant, and he's basically, you know, one of the people out there attacking police. That's why he was talking about you think you can beat up cops? You think you can beat up cops? That fills in that blank. F your kind, F your race, F you, the instigator shouted as he hurled threats at the man and egged him on to stand up for himself. It's unclear what started the fight. How is it? How is it unclear at this point? You've got the guy being aggressive towards the other guy, calling him everything but a child of God. Being very racist towards the dude, let's be honest about this shit. And then you say it's unclear what started the confrontation. You have the basic facts laid out in your article. It's pretty goddamn clear what started the confrontation. The guy being the aggressor started the confrontation. Yeah, dude, Sam, people are bailing on New York. I'm surprised those numbers aren't higher with people leaving that joint. Pretty much the only people that are staying in New York are people that are too blind to see what's going on, or people that don't have the funds to actually get the hell out of that place. All right. Look how they call him the original agitator. Accused a female bystander of stabbing him when she tried to intervene in the fight. No, she did stab him, homeboy. From what it looked like, you can see the blood on his back right there. You could see him when he pulled the knife out and dropped the knife. Again, it was unclear what started the fight. Horse shit. Man's blood-stained t-shirt. 32-year-old wearing a yellow shirt, black jacket, tried to ignore the relentless threats, but ultimately jumped out of his seat at the back of the car to put up his fist after being berated for nearly 2 minutes. So it's pretty damn clear what started that fight. And again, they call him the agitator instead of the aggressor, instead of the attacker. The agitator pulled a gun out of his jacket during the confrontation before screaming, "Let's get it." Yeah, he got it. Commuters sitting close try to ignore the violent ramblings, also sprang from their seats, moved away from the man. Hell yeah, I would too. Biggest difference is I'm going to have my shit on me. And if he pointed that shit at me, he's getting dusted up. The two danced around one another, occasionally throwing fists as strap hangers begged them to stop. "Come on, there's babies on here," one woman can be heard pleading. The aggressor, they actually used aggressor then. Then pounced on the other man, pushing him into a two-seater and delivering several blows. Young woman intervened and struck the 36-year-old's back, which caused him to immediately turn his ire on her. Yeah, she stabbed him in the back, and he kind of had that shit coming. So the guy in the vest, the worker in the vest, probably more than likely a construction worker, separated the two. And then you can hear the attacker screaming, "I'm bleeding, you stabbed me, right?" The aggressor asked the woman, with blood beginning to drip down his back. "Oh, yeah, dude, you got yourself fucking stabbed. You're being a douchebag, and people will defend themselves." Says the woman screamed, "I didn't do nothing." 36-year-old threw his jacket onto the seat, slowly began rifling through the pockets while shouting at the woman. After several seconds, he pulled out a gun, cocked it. He didn't cock it. He racked the slide and charged at the 32-year-old. And at that point, it looked more like he was kind of moving towards both of them, the woman and the guy. After several seconds, he pulled out a gun, cocked it, charged the 32-year-old. The packed car erupted into screams. The strap hangers rushed to the opposite end, with several throwing themselves on the floor. The rest of the fight wasn't filmed, so they don't have any video of the actual shooting. All right. Desperately scream, "Let me out, let me out." So this is Yellow Shirt. It's what it looks like. That's the dude in the yellow shirt. The one had to defend himself. Police said a 32-year-old was confronted by a screaming man, managed to wrestle the gun away during the struggle and use it on his attacker. So they finally get to the whole crux of the situation towards the end of this article. Police said the 32-year-old, who was confronted by a screaming man, had managed to wrestle the gun away during the struggle and use it against his attacker. So they finally get to the fact down here that this is a self-defense. Oh, he didn't have a permit, Tress. I will guarantee you he didn't have a permit. I will guarantee you he was probably a prohibited possessor. Okay. Normal people like us that carry every day do not act like this. People that tend to act like this are people who have serious issues with aggression in the first place, more than likely have criminal histories, and ain't right in the, well, I'm not right in the head, but I don't go around and do this shit. I'll tell you right now, carrying every day, I am more polite when I carry than if for some reason, it typically doesn't happen if I leave the house without that on me. I'm more polite when I have that. I am more prone to absolutely walk away from somebody when I have that gun on me, as long as I can do it in a safe manner. And yes, I've had to. So the funny things is, one, so in the press conference last night, I found it awful suspicious and pretty much normal that they didn't mention the races of the people involved in this. Because I guarantee you, if the aggressor had been, I don't know, my shade, it would have been all over the place. Because that is the absolute formula these people use every damn time. If it's another race, especially if the aggressor is black, I ain't mentioning race on nothing. Because they have to drive narratives. They can't be honest about facts. So they couldn't give a description. They just gave ages. Yeah, dude, Stossel did a show where he tried to get a pistol permit in New York and ended up getting denied. Because in New York, it's not who you know, it's who you blow. All right, let's see. Let's pick through the end of this article. So this is where it mentioned the 32-year-old took the other guy's gun, defended himself. He was arrested before he even stepped onto the platform. Yeah. Okay, I can understand them not knowing what happened and arresting people involved. I can understand that. What I can't understand, what drives me up a fucking wall, is during the press conference, when the guys there had pretty much all of this information, they couldn't mention that this looked like a self-defense shooting. They had the video. They looked at the video. They couldn't tell me, oh, this was a self-defense shooting. They blamed the gun, didn't talk about self-defense, talked more about, oh, guns bad, people shouldn't carry everywhere. No, this is an example of why you should be carrying. When some crazy POS is being an absolute racist prick and being aggressive and then pulls a blade on you first, attacks you physically, and then pulls a gun on you. If you didn't shoot him when he pulled the blade, when he pulled the gun, as soon as it cleared his jacket, that's nope. You're leaking at that point, and leaking a lot. All right, so 36-year-old man was rushed to Brooklyn Methodist Hospital, listed in critical but stable condition, and undergoing surgery. So NYPD Chief Transit Michael Kemper, whatever, fuck, I don't care, confirmed during the press briefing Friday that the man had been stabbed by the woman with a sharp object during the melee. I'm going to bet that sharp object was a knife. I'm just shooting from the hip here. She was described as standing 5'1" to 5'2" tall, weighing between 110 and 120 pounds. Last seen wearing blue jeans, black sweater. Subway car station covered with blood and ballistics. What is covered in blood and ballistics? I mean, covered in blood and some brass laying around. Small caliber firearm recovered from the scene. Not clear whether the shooter will face any charges, with the police stating that the victim appears to be the aggressor. Could we not throw that at the top of this story? Because when you read the first little bit of this story, it just sounds like some crazy sumbitch shooting on a subway. But again, they can't do facts. They've got to protect narratives. Mayor Eric Adams on Friday morning sounded the alarm about mental health crisis in the city. No shit. When I looked at this tape, it broke it down piece by piece, frame by frame. It is clear that it personifies what our pursuit is involved around these with severe mental health illness. He said in an early appearance on NY1. And as the investigation unfolds, we're going to see the nexus between the actions that took place there and many of the random acts of violence that just unnerves New Yorkers. Neither man has a documented history of mental illness with authorities. All right. So let's stop that for a second. Calling the aggressor a agitator, not explaining that clearly that he was the aggressor the whole way. He was attacking the victim. He's the one who brought the gun to the fight, that the victim took the gun and defended himself. Not laying that out clearly is intellectually fucking dishonest. And it's the way we see shootings described in a lot of cases. Because they absolutely do not want to admit, one, that the cops are not always there to defend you. You are on a moving subway car with an absolute lunatic who's attacking you. There is nowhere to go. None. You need to be able to defend yourself. Okay, I got to get a better thing of pepper spray that I can carry all the time, but, that stays on me all the time, along with my firearm. Because I'm a realist. There are crazy, insane assholes out there who will attack you. And for no other reason but, hey, you're a shade lighter than them. It's ridiculous. And to say, well, we're putting 1,000 National Guard troops into our subways. We're there to keep you safe. Searching everybody, patting everybody down. I give you Exhibit A because it happened, 3 days after they put 1,000 National Guard into the subways. What's up, Toy Town? What's going on, my brother? How you and the kiddos doing? Oh, dude, Barton, you ain't lying. Anybody who's mentally healthy with a functioning brain doesn't vote for people who run states like this. No. It's just it's insane to me that this situation can happen. They know the aggressor. They know this other guy was attacked. And then they just go after the gun. And then they say, well, people, no, you can't carry guns. And the subway's a sacred place. Dude, come on, man. Your gun-free zones don't work. Criminals do not care about them. So guess what? I don't give a shit about them either. Because I'm no threat to others. But when there is someone who is looking for an easy target and goes to a gun-free zone, guess what? I want to be able to defend myself and others. And I realize I am responsible for every bullet that leaves my gun. See, that criminal doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about attacking people physically, much shooting them. He doesn't care about any of that shit. So your stupid-ass gun laws don't matter. They are charges after the fact in most cases. They didn't stop a thing. So I will be amazed if they don't charge the guy who defended himself or the chick who was trying to defend him and stab the other guy. I'll be amazed if they don't charge either one of them. I know good and well if the victim had had a gun on him and then shot the dude when he pulled his gun out, he would 100% be looking at time. Even though he was the victim and he was acting defensively the whole way. Don't believe me? We can go find articles where someone in New York had a gun that wasn't registered. They actually received it after a family member died. Didn't register it. Someone broke into their home armed. They defended themselves, shot and I think killed their attacker, and they went to prison. Fit that into your head and then say that there is justice in that. There's no justice in any of these gun laws, period. There's no justice in putting someone in prison simply because they had a gun, not because of what they were doing with it. Oh, well, Chess, dude, they literally put more cops and 1,000 National Guard into their subways just the other day to feel people up and basically take away their rights. But even with that level of so-called security, you're not going to stop the criminals. You can't keep drugs, guns, cell phones, and other shit out of prisons. How do you think you're going to do it at a supposed to be free world where people can move freely and transition from one area to the next without being strip searched? I've told people about it before, man. For a long time, I lost my rights. I did 11 months in prison in a little daycare of a prison, and it took me a very long time to get all my rights back, even though I was no threat to anybody. Worked on an outside detail pretty much every weekday that I was there. Every weekday when I worked on that detail, when I came into prison again, I had to strip down butthole naked and show them every part of my body, do the whole monkey dance to prove I didn't have anything on me before I could go to my dorm, get cleaned up, and have some semblance of a little bit of fucking sanity. But I was around more dope in prison than I've ever been around on the fucking street. And the shit don't rain out of the goddamn sky. So if you can't stop that in a controlled environment like that, do you really think you're going to stop guns or anything else on the street? If you think that, I will use my perfect fix of stupidity line. And if you think that, go into your kitchen, find the biggest, heaviest, preferably cast iron frying pan that you have, and beat yourself into the face until you are either unconscious or you can have a logical thought, and then get back to me, and we can talk about it then. I don't know. Does this frustrate anybody else like it does me? It's absolutely insanity to me that the police can get up there and absolutely just, doesn't matter this dude was aggressive, doesn't matter this dude started the whole thing, call the victim the shooter. The way they frame these arguments, the way they frame these narratives drives me up a wall. Oh, well, yeah, Bob, you're right. You can't fix stupid, man. Stupid is forever. That's Ron White put it. He's talking about, you can bring her here, you can get this done to her, get that done to her, da 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 da. But stupid is forever, and yeah, it is. Yeah, I've seen it happen on Bugs Bunny too. Let's see. I got time, so let's do something. And this kind of dovetails into this actually. I tell you, give me just a sec. Let me go check something, and we're gonna watch something else because it's interesting. All right, let me find this. I wonder if I can find it quicker in my history than I can anywhere else. Let's see. It's which one was it? This is it. Let's go back to another screen share. Yeah, Kurt, I saw that. So, for anybody who hasn't heard about some of this, so the Michigan school shooter, they took both of his parents and have now convicted both of his parents, 4 counts each of manslaughter for both of his parents, making them basically responsible for the shootings that he committed. I watched a lot of the trial for the mom with Kurt from Uncivil Law. If you're not following Kurt from Uncivil, he's a cool dude and very sharp lawyer. And most lawyers I don't like. I like Kurt because Kurt's honest about things and he is very sharp. I didn't know till a couple of weeks ago he was actually involved with the Virginia Citizens Defense League when he lived in Virginia, which is cool as shit. What's up, Dark? But yeah, I watched a lot of that. It's the Ethan Crumbley. It's his parents. Fuck, I shouldn't have said his name. Fuck that little prick. But they actually went in and charged his mom and dad each with 4 counts of manslaughter for the people that he killed. Watching the trial, this sets a really strange precedent, and it was kind of a really dangerous precedent, holding the parents accountable for what the kid did. Because you buy your kid a car, you buy your kid a cell phone. What if they're talking on their cell phone and then they run someone over and kill them? Are you going after the parents? This was mainly about the gun in this instance. That they're so anti-gun, that's why they were going after him. But that sets a legal precedent. Are we going to start going after gangbangers' parents? People who are out there robbing, murdering, shooting. Are we going to go after their parents? Hey, you knew your kid was a shithead. You knew your kid was out late at night. You weren't keeping control of your kid. Guess what? We get to go after you. Yeah, that's what I was asking, Bob. So, we'll see. Toy Town, I can't argue with you there at all. I think it is kind of normalizing that militarized presence in our daily lives. And again, this whole situation could be solved very easily by allowing people to carry their guns for self-defense. Everywhere that happens in the areas where people do that very thing, you see crime rates drop. And in states that still, or the states that have went constitutional carry, the only place you see rises in gun violence is where you see rises in drugs, which kind of correlates together. When you allow people to defend themselves, you typically see drops in criminal activity, either because that criminal gets shot in the face and they're no longer around to commit crimes, or they're a whole lot more wary on who they choose as a victim because they're rolling the dice at that point. So this, but it's like I said, this kind of dovetails into this. So we're going to watch more John Lott, because John Lott is an absolutely exceptional resource when it comes to anything around firearms, because he gives you the data, he lays out the data, he's not pushing a narrative, and he shows you the trends that happen with more people carrying, less people carrying, gun bans, all that kind of stuff. And he lays out very rational arguments, which is why Democrats can't stand this dude, because he crushes every damn anti-gun narrative they have. And it's one of the reasons I love him so much, because he does crush every anti-gun narrative, but he does it with facts and data. What's up, Skilly? What's up, my brother? How's it going? Yeah, Bob, yeah. Toronto police telling everybody, hey, leave your keys by your front door. That way when people break in to steal your shit, they have easy access to your keys, because we don't want them to have to beat the shit out of you to steal your car and your... Not, hey, if someone comes in your door, you have every right to defend yourself. Rock and roll. This is why when they banned guns in England and places like that, you saw home invasions go through the roof, and they tend to happen when people are home, because they know the people in the house more than likely aren't armed, and then they can just force people to tell them where all the goodies are versus breaking in when they're not there and then having to actually look for the shit. Bernie, yeah, dude, that's my downfall of things. It's this rational brain. Hey, maybe we need some facts and data on things, and maybe the facts and data are actually no. Rationality in this world is well, common sense ain't common no more, and most of the people who use the phrase common sense don't have a bit of damn sense at all. Right. So this was a lecture John Lott gave Lake Forest. I think it was about 6 days ago, so it's about a week or so ago.
So with that, Dr. Lott, we're really ready to go on tech right now.
Hey,
We
really
lost
good.
about a half an hour of time.
Johnny Propane, what's up, my brother?
From 1 to 1:40, trying to get all of this to work. So we are good to go. So I will turn it over to you, and thank you for staying with us.
Thanks for having me. It's good to talk to you all again. I wish I was there in person. But as
hopefully I do a good enough job sharing this stuff.
In my first lecture, I tried to give you a very short introduction to kind of the problems with analyzing data and how to understand data. You know, I could have given a whole semester class just on that. But now I want to try to go through some specifics. I guess a copy of a book, my most recent book, is available for you all to kind of look through more of this stuff in depth. But what I want to try to do is just first of all have.
So John Lott, basically famous for writing the gun, more guns, less crime. And again, laying out facts. The book's been updated. I can't remember his original, when it originally came out, years ago. And it gets updated every couple of years. And all of it just continues to prove his research. US, 50% during the day. Canada, 80% during the day. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly right, Bob. Yeah, Sam, 100%. Especially in Well, I mean, at any time, but I think things are going to continue to get crazy. So if you're not self-defense minded, haven't taken anything as far as self-defense, whether it's firearms, blades, guns, you need to be getting schooled up on some stuff. Because I don't see this world getting any better unless there's some very serious changes.
I have a short video that talks about, where people get a lot of the perceptions that they do about guns. Obviously, it's not just from the news, it's also from entertainment. My guess is the entire debate that we have right now would be very different if the media covered some of these things differently than they do. So I just want to start with that, and then I'm going to go through a number of specific claims that have been made to kind of give you an idea of where those types of claims come from and what are some of the issues with them. So this first video is about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hollywood hates guns. Well,
Media
they like them in
manipulation.
movies. But as soon as it comes to a good civilian using a gun for self-defense, Hollywood turns anti-gun.
Crickets.
Why the gun on?
Hollywood constantly portrays people who hate guns.
I'm not a huge fan of weapons. Now do you see why I don't like guns? You don't like guns either.
I'm not a big fan of guns. I don't like it.
Why'd I leave the FBI? Guns, mainly.
It's almost as if they're trying to condition people to hate guns.
Yeah, how about them?
Even Navy SEALs warn against owning guns.
I need a gun to protect the kids, and you're not around.
You'd be dangerous to yourself and to the kids.
The wise law enforcement experts constantly urge people not to use them.
But in my experience, the problem with carrying a gun is that eventually...
Funny how that hadn't cut down on
But
gang
Hollywood
shootings,
gets this backwards. In real life, police strongly support civilians owning guns and carrying them for self-defense. A recent survey by the National Association of Chiefs of Police polled thousands of sheriffs and chiefs of police. 76% believe that qualified, law-abiding armed citizens help law enforcement reduce violent criminal activity. Detroit's police chief urges people to carry guns.
So good Americans who are responsible with concealed weapons can make a difference.
He became chief and encouraged civilians to carry guns 6 years ago. Detroit's murder rate fell since then.
I'm excited about our trend downward.
Nationwide, rank and file cops show even stronger support for private gun ownership.
Now, again, and that's a good point he's making here, rank and file cops, the people out there actually doing the job, the overwhelming majority of them completely agree with civilians carrying guns. The political officers, the chiefs, the whoever's, like the ones we saw at the start of this thing with the NYPD or with the NY shooting, where you got the guy out there talking about, I'm glad this governor's getting rid of guns. I'm glad this mayor's cracking down on guns and people shouldn't be carrying guns. Eat a dick. Big one. Lots of them.
Than do police chiefs. More than 90% supported civilians carrying guns. No surprise, Hollywood's cops are wrong, and real-life cops are right. Police are informed by what they see on the street every day. They know how important having a gun is to their own safety, and they know that private citizens can help.
We've seen our Good Samaritans. We've seen them go to the aid to others because they were good Americans with concealed weapons permits.
Many Hollywood crime show writers clearly know nothing about guns and crime. The myths they push on people are endless.
What else do we know about these guns?
This is the machine gun that Davis was firing at us, so-called cop killer.
Stop. Since 1934, there
So
are only
ridiculous.
2 known uses
Clint Eastwood,
ever
what's up, my brother?
of a machine gun being used in a murder. Yet Hollywood shows criminals using machine guns to outgun cops all the time. Hollywood also finds endless ways to insult civilians who are using guns.
No good's gonna come from you guys running around here with assault rifles. We're prisoners, we're on the loose. We got a right to protect our neighborhood.
Yeah, that's a job for law enforcement, not a ragtag militia.
Hollywood plays to bigoted stereotypes,
You
depicting
can
gun
take your
owners
badge
as
and
dumb
you can just
hits.
shove it right in your ass.
Got a fugitive they can get off me. Now they do it. Officers, please. Hey, let him go. That's not who we're looking for. I kept telling him that. You sure? He looks guilty as hell to me. At least check his papers.
Let him go.
In real life, citizen volunteers and neighborhood watch programs save lives. A 2008 U.S. Justice Department analysis found that crime fell 16% in areas that started a neighborhood watch program compared to those that did not. Some of Hollywood's bias is comical. In this show, a woman asks a federal agent if he's worried about not having his gun in a gun-free zone when he's facing professional killers.
Sure about this no guns thing?
Bad guys won't have them either.
Bad guys won't have them either? Seriously? Has a bad guy ever seen a no guns allowed sign and turned around? In the show, the killers obey the signs and leave their guns behind.
Yeah,
But
let's ask Alec Baldwin what he thinks
only
about
encourage
it.
criminals.
I'd be interested.
They serve as a magnet for
acquiring
criminals.
minds.
Virtually all the mass public shootings in the United States since 1950 have occurred in places where general citizens are banned from having guns. The Virginia Beach shooting this year was another example of this. A woman who worked at the municipal office building talked with her husband the night before the attack about bringing her permitted concealed handgun to work for self-defense. But she decided not to because of a city rule against carrying guns. She and 11 others were killed the next day by a disgruntled coworker. In another recent case,
and he'll touch on another case here in a second where someone did bring their gun. That's why I talk about a lot of times. Unless I am going through a metal detector, my gun is on me. Period. Unless they're wanting people, unless it's metal detectors, my stuff's staying on me. Because these gun-free zone signs don't stop criminals. And if they won't stop the people who want to prey on others, why should they stop me when I'm not a threat to anybody that is not a direct threat to me? Again, I got a couple of idiots in Alabama that want to pass something that would make me a felon when I have my gun on me when I pick my daughter up at school because it's in a school zone. It's retarded. But they've got a full-blown media out there that pushes their narrative.
Doctor carried a gun anyway, despite his hospital's no-gun policy, and he stopped a mass public shooting. As the district attorney put it, if the doctor did not have a firearm, he'd be dead today. And I believe that other people in that facility would also be dead. That real-life situation would make a gripping TV story, but don't expect to see it. Hollywood bias is everywhere, and it endangers lives by misleading people on guns.
All right. Well, I just mentioned one or two other things beyond what's in the video there, and that is my center. We did a kind of a deep dive looking at all the entertainment cop shows on ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox during the 2021-2022 television season. And 86% of the guns that were used by criminals in those shows were machine guns.
Yeah, 100% DLD.
You know, you watch a show from, Magnum PI or something, and you'd think that there are more people killed with machine guns on a Sunday in Hawaii than have been killed in the United States as a whole since the 1930s. The other issue I just bring up quickly is the gun-free zone issue. And it's this notion that economists refer to as kind of marginal deterrence. And that is, there's a reason why these criminals go and target these gun-free zones. And that is, if you take something like the Covenant school shooting this last year in Tennessee, if you were to take a gun into a gun-free school zone, that's a 6-year prison term that you face there. For you or I, 6 years in prison would completely change our lives. We would be felons at that point. And the issue that you have is that for this murderer, let's say the murderer had lived, they died, they were murdered, they were shot to death by the police. But let's say that they lived, they'd be facing 6 life sentences or 6 death penalties. Does the notion that taking
no
6
doubt,
years
Martin.
away from their 7th life would be a deterrent? That they say, well, I can live with 6 death penalties, but you take away 6 years from my 7th life, and that will.
Yeah, that's. People are going to go out and either rape or murder innocent people, rob innocent people. They are not worried about your gun-free zone sign. They are already going to, they already have it in their mind. They're going to commit a crime which could put them either in prison for decades or get them a death penalty. They're not worried about your laws in the first place. So if they're willing to commit crimes that will give them decades in prison, put them in the, on death row, there is no deterrent in your law for them. The only thing you deter are people who want to stay out of prison. So they leave their gun in their vehicle, and then as I got to cover it out of Colorado. Colorado wants to make you liable if you leave your gun in your vehicle, then someone steals your vehicle and gets your gun, or they break into your vehicle and take your gun. They want to make you liable. There is no rational thought among these anti-gun people. There is none at all.
That will deter me from committing the crime just isn't serious. And so what you've ended up doing, I mean, despite the intention to try to create safe areas, the gun-free zone actually accomplishes the opposite, because the only people that it's imposing a real penalty on are the law-abiding good citizens, not the criminals. And all it does is ensure that the criminals that take their guns into the area will be the only ones that are armed. Their goal is to get media attention. And they know the more people they kill, the more media attention they can get. You'll frequently see statements like, if I can only kill more people than such and such did, I'll get more media attention. And they know that the more people they kill, the more media attention they'll get. And they know if they go to a place where their victims are banned from having guns, it's going to be easier for them to go and
Bob,
kill
I've
more
seen
people
that
and get
before,
more media
and
attention.
it is 100% on spot.
So
spot on.
I wanted to kind of go through and talk a little bit more about these mass public shootings, these mass shootings, because the way these terms are used, I think a lot, are very misleading. People don't understand the different definitions that are used. So in January, the Biden administration finally put out its report on the Uvalde school shooting from about 2 years ago. And in the president's statement on that, he said, over the last year since Uvalde, our country has experienced a staggering 650 mass shootings. You could look at something similar after the Lewiston, Maine bar shooting in end of last October. CNN put out a statement that there were 586 of these mass shootings that year. So what they'll say is, you've had something like Uvalde where 21 people were murdered. We've had 650 since then, or CNN or New York Times or Washington Post will go and mention a mass shooting like the Lewiston one where 18 people were shot to death in the bar there, and they'll go and mention that there are 586 of these. The thing is, I would argue you're really comparing apples and oranges on these things. The source for both the president and the different news outlets, when they frequently make these claims, is from a gun control group called the Gun Violence Archive. The Gun Violence Archive defines a mass shooting as 3 or more people injured and or killed. What you don't understand is that about 80% of their cases involve gang
unless I
fights
got to
over
go
drug
through a
charges.
metal detector and I
most
have
of the
to be
rest
there,
involve
like
things
going
like
into a
robbery.
courthouse or something like
And when
that.
they say injured, that doesn't even
My gun's
necessarily
on.
involve people who are shot. It could be people who tripped and fell and got hurt when they were running away from the shootings. By contrast,
so let me drive that point home that he's making right there. When they count and they do numbers on mass shootings, and they say this mass shooting happened and there were 47 people injured, just throwing a number out there. It doesn't mean 47 people were shot. They count someone getting a sprained ankle or a scraped knee as an injury during these shootings. We saw that with the parade shooting in Kansas City, where they mentioned all these shots fired. They mentioned all these people shot. But when we looked at the actual numbers of people that were transported to the hospital, the majority of the people that were transported to the hospital or made it to the hospital in other vehicles were all people who were involved in the actual shooting. They were all people who were pulling guns. And they have tried to bury the shit out of that. Because when we broke down the initial video on there, you could see at least 7 people involved in the initial scuffle. And you can see 4 to 5 of those people pulling guns. One lady got caught in the crossfire and was actually died due to that shooting, which is fucking sad. And everybody else involved in that shooting ought to burn in hell. But anybody who was moving away from there, tripped, fell, got knocked over, got trampled, all of these things that weren't gunshot wounds are counted as injuries. And they do that so that they can pump the numbers up. Because again, it's about a narrative. It's not about facts. It's the same way they'll talk about, well, these mass shootings aren't stopped by law-abiding gun owners. Well, yes, because most of these shootings happen in gun-free zones, and most law-abiding gun owners will tend to leave their gun in their vehicle when they go into these zones. The one, it was in the food court. They named a drill after this guy. He walked right past the gun-free zones with his gun, and he stopped a wannabe mass shooter. These people bitched more about the fact that the guy who stopped the shooting ignored the gun-free zone sign than they did about the guy who was going to commit the mass shooting. Again, this is more logic from the left. Bitch about the guy who stopped the shooting, not about the guy who was about to commit a mass murder. Dickens, that's who it was. 100% right, Bob. You know, I thought about that the other day, Chess. If someone has a gun-free zone, gun-free business, whatever it is, if I am injured or one of my family members or me is killed in their gun-free zone, they should be responsible for that. They should be responsible for damages, funeral costs, medical bills, you name it. If you hang that gun-free zone sign up, you are taking personal responsibility or corporate responsibility, depending on the situation, for my safety. And if you fail at your fucking job, you should be responsible for every bit of it. Should be. You know, again, getting back to when I was locked up. So I was a ward of the state. The state was responsible for my safety. If anything happens to me during that time where they're responsible for my safety, they should have to pay damages, medical costs, everything, because they're responsible for me. Same with gun-free zones. If you hang your little gun-free zone sign up there, I don't want any guns in my business. Okay, you are completely responsible for my safety. The same way, if you don't put a wet floor sign out and I slip on a puddle and break my damn leg, you're responsible for that. If you hang your little gun-free zone sign up, you're responsible for whatever happens in there. Where someone comes in, commits a shooting, you're responsible. Let's see how many people change their mind about stuff like that. There is a bill about responsibility for having gun-free zone signs at your business. Can't remember what jurisdiction. Dude, I think there was one. I'll have to look. I think there was one federally. And I can't remember who sponsored it, but I'm pretty sure there was one federally for that, because it's federal gun-free zones in a lot of places. So yeah, I want them to be, if you're going to disarm me, you're responsible for my safety. There's none of this, oh, cops aren't responsible, they're not there to protect you. No. If you're going to disarm me, if I can't defend myself, I am underneath your protection. You're responsible. I want to see bills like that passed. Now, do any bills like that have a chance in hell of getting passed? No. Mom's Demand, Everytown, Newtown, Giffords, Brady, all them would be completely against shit like that. DJ Play Nice, what's up, my brother? How's it going? Oh, DJ, did I ever explain to you the idea for the music stream that I wanted to do? I'll give it a second, let you respond, and then if I didn't, I'll explain it real quick. And some of you guys in here may not have heard it either. Okay, so I explained the other night. At a certain point in the night, sometimes, depending on how much crap I've absorbed during the day, where all I want to do is listen to music. And I'd like to do it with everybody. But we all know I can't play music on stream and everybody just jam out and have a good time because copyright issues. Radio stations can get away with doing it because they pay all fees or whatever. Fuck me. I don't know. But what I'd like to do is try a music stream, where, say, we start off, I post a link for a song, give everybody a little bit to get to the link and give everybody a little bit to get past commercials, and then we listen to the song basically together. I realize there's going to be some lag time and, it's going to be a little bit off, and just kind of bounce through a stream doing that, and maybe get people in the chat to, I don't know, maybe put a wheel up, put everybody's name on the wheel, hit the wheel, spin it, and then whoever pops up posts a song. And then everybody listens to that together. And we just, I don't know, just hang out for a night, man. Just do nothing but listen to music. No gun content, no political content. Yeah, kind of like a watch party. I don't know, me, definitely you, DJ. You got to be there because your freaking music tastes are off the chain. You're kind of like me. In a way, probably your music tastes are probably even better than mine. But we just pick through songs, man, and just jam one night. Hang out, drink, smoke, shoot shit, and just not necessarily veg out, but just get away from the normal BS that we're concentrating on. Get onto something that's not so serious. Get in some music. Get everybody's musical taste involved in it, and just jam. We say several states have had your responsibility for your gun-free zone signs in the past 22 years or so. If they have, I'd be interested to see how many people have actually won suits about being injured in that gun-free zone. I'd be real interested to see that. Oh, dude, if I was doing anything retail where, I'm dealing with money and dealing with products and shit like that, you bet your ass there's going to be multiple guns. One on me and a couple of others staged around me. Bet money on that.
the FBI has a very different definition of shootings. So they have a couple different definitions. One is active shootings, and active shootings are cases where somebody's been shot at. Could be anything from one person being shot at and missed all the way up to a mass public shooting. But most importantly,
Bob, I'd love to
it
see more
involves
lawsuits
cases
like that.
that don't involve another crime. So they exclude the cases like gang fights over drug turf or robberies, because they're trying to get at those types of attacks where the whole point of the attack is to go into a mall or a movie theater or a grocery store or a school, simply with the idea of trying to go and kill people. And they're looking at public shootings. Now, the FBI also has this term mass, which they add to these things. So these mass public shootings are 4 more people killed in a public place, not involving some other type of crime like a gang fight over drug turf or robbery.
Let me look at
It's
it now.
not that the FBI doesn't think that gang fights over drug turf are horrible and it's bad that people are being killed in those types of situations. But they're trying to distinguish these cases because the causes and solutions for these cases are very different. If you look at something like gang fights over drug turf, it's pretty easy to explain why those go up and down over time. It's basically the profitability of selling drugs. As the profitability of selling drugs goes up, you'll see more gang fights against each other in order to try to control drug turf. As the profitability goes down, there'll be fewer of those. When you're talking about these mass public shootings, as I was just mentioning a minute ago, it's overwhelmingly people who are suicidal, but they want to get attention. They'll frequently say that they're unappreciated or girls won't go out with them or something like that. And they want the media to talk about them having existed. They want that type of attention. And so how you're going to stop those is you have to take away the media attention they get. And the way they think they get media attention is by killing more people. And so if you can stop them from killing more people, for example, getting somebody there quickly on the scene to stop the attack, you'll be able to stop. So just give you an idea of the difference. So, I just was mentioning cases of 650 or 586 mass shootings by the Gun Violence Archive. If you take mass public shootings as 4 more people killed in a public place not involving some other type of crime, over the last 25 years, you're talking about between 1 and 8 of those cases occurring in any given year, with an average of over 2 of those cases. Now, when I worked at the U.S. Department of Justice, and my time, is something going on there that I should know about?
No, I'm going to go shut the door.
And I had my position was
download it
senior
now,
advisor for research and statistics in the Department of Justice. And one of the tasks that I had was to go and look at these FBI active shooting reports. So the FBI over the 9 years from 2014 to 2022 says that there were 302 of these active shooting attacks. Just as comparison, you have
I got it, Jess.
According to the Gun Violence Archive, you have almost twice
as
many of those occurring in any given year as compared to over the 9 years, you have 302 occurring according to the FBI. And again, these are anything from one person being shot at and missed all the way up and nobody injured, all the way up to a mass public shooting. Now, one of the things that was interesting was that the FBI said of these 302 attacks, 14 of them were stopped by civilians with permanent concealed handguns, for about 4.6%. When I was at the Department of Justice, I noticed that they had missed a lot of cases involving civilian. Basically, all the cases they missed were cases where civilians with concealed handguns had stopped the attack. They had missed about 150 of those. And they had also misclassified some cases, like the White Settlement Church shooting near Fort Worth in December 2019. They classified the person as a security guard when in fact he was just a parishioner there. And
so listen to what he's saying right there. And I know you guys heard it, but I still got to drive home the point. And this is on purpose, guys. They don't misclassify a defensive shooting by someone carrying a gun who's not involved in other crimes. They don't classify that or misclassify that just as oh, whoopsie. They're trying to bury the numbers and drive the numbers down of legal carriers who use their guns in self-defense or defense of others. They'll do the same thing if someone like what's his name, who carried in a gun-free zone and stopped a shooting. They'll say, oh, no, he was committing a criminal act. He was carrying a gun in a gun-free zone. We can't count that as a defensive gun use because he was committing a crime. Narrative is more important than facts with these people. And their narrative is always going to come down on the side of, oh, gun's bad. It's freaking ridiculous. And it's on purpose.
In fact, they had a lot of parishioners who were carrying that day. But you don't need to take my word for it. At the bottom, there's a link there. If you go tiny URL and just type in missing FBI active shooting cases, you can go and see news reports there, and you can go and see whether on your own whether or not they match the FBI definition of those things. But rather than about 4.6%, you find almost 40% of the active shooting cases were stopped by civilians. But whether you take the 302 or 440 over those 9 years, either one of those, even with a lot of these cases just involving a gun being fired and nobody hit, it's way below the gun violence archive numbers. Now, there's another point to bring up, and that's something that we've touched on briefly, and that is whether these attacks were occurring in places where people were allowed to have guns or not, so-called gun-free zones. And when you're talking about law-abiding citizens stopping these attacks, you can't really expect this civilians to stop, law-abiding civilians to stop attacks in places where it's illegal for them to have guns. So if you look at the data for 2022, the FBI says about 6% of the active shooting cases were stopped by law-abiding civilians.
It's absolute bullshit, Sam.
Have the corrected numbers that are there, I think it's about 41%. But if you separate out cases where they were legally able to carry guns versus ones they weren't, you're talking about almost 64% of the cases. Now, one claim that you very frequently hear is that guns are the leading cause of children's deaths. I just have a couple of quotes here.
We hear this constantly.
Vice President Harris last June, for example, said the #1 cause of death.
Yeah, we hear this constantly. Guns, leading cause of death for children. Again, they're playing with numbers. They can't be honest about this at all. When we look at, and I've showed it on here, the Whiskers data or whatever it is from the CDC. If we go to, because they try to push this narrative, these innocent children are getting killed by firearms all the time. If we go to accidental firearms deaths, in other words, someone is not involved in an active shootout or something like that, there's roughly, for the past few years, there's typically right around 100 to 130 something, maybe 140 something kids that are killed basically messing with a firearm, negligent discharge, friend shoots another friend, playing with a gun. All those, there's roughly about 100 and something of those every year. The vast majority of the shootings they're talking about are all gang and drug related. And they want to drive home the narrative. Oh, this is the 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 leading cause of death for children. Yeah, if you add in people out there in the drug game, people gang banging, if you add in mass shooters, sure, you can get to those numbers, but you have to be absolutely dishonest about your numbers. If we go with honest numbers, your children are like 10 times more likely to get poisoned by stuff in your household, whether it is a drug, whether it is a cleaning chemical, medication, you name it. They are more than likely to die from a poisoning in your home than from a firearm. And it's not even close. Car accidents are way over that. Again, reason I like John is because he's breaking these numbers down and he's being honest with it. He is not trying to push a narrative. He's giving you the numbers and telling you the result. See, the other people have a result and then they make the numbers fit the result or the narrative, to be more specific. Hopefully my signal hangs out because, man, it just started storming here. %, Sam. 100%. If you're going to have guns in the home and you have children, train your children. If you can teach your children not to stick forks in light sockets or to play with matches, if you can teach your children not to touch hot stoves, you can teach your children that firearms are not toys, and no matter what, you don't play with firearms. That goes for people who don't even like firearms. Still, teach your children about it. These are not toys. You do not play with it. Teach your children the safety behind them. I don't care whether you go to some place and you get a blue gun, a training gun, and teach your children about them. In some cases, you could use a toy gun, but you teach your children about them. And then what you'll see is that 100 and something innocent children that are killed by firearms every year, you'll see that number cut in half at least. But man, if we had an honest media, we could have these conversations and we could save lives without stripping people of their rights, their liberty, their property, without sending people to prison. We could actually save lives. But they're so focused on the narrative and so focused about the gun, they don't give a shit that these kids are dying. They need the bodies to go stand on for their platform.
Of children in America is gun violence. And last year, about the same time, the White House tweeted out, guns are the number one
you're right
killer
there
of
too,
children.
Bob.
And I could give you about 24 statements from President Biden about that. So you can go to the Centers for Disease Control website, their Wickers
and I've
report,
used those sites before.
and they have very detailed data for all sorts of ages. But so if you look at children, find a child as somebody under 18, and you can look at motor vehicle deaths, you can look at firearm deaths. And so first of all, I'm just going to look at the blue and the orange lines that are there. The blue are motor vehicle deaths. You can see for 2019, for example, there were 2,200 motor vehicle deaths for children under 18. There were almost 1,700 firearms deaths. And you can see it for the other years, 2020 and 2021. Now, when I talked to you all before, one of the things I mentioned to you was the difference between homicide and murder. It's never really been obvious to me why people use homicide, but homicide involves murders plus justifiable homicides. And why you want to...
Well, and this is where John's being a hell of a lot nicer than I am a lot of times, because I know why they use homicide. Homicide is just a death. You can have justifiable homicides. The reason they use homicides is so they can pump the numbers up. So they don't want to tell you that, well, this 14-year-old died and he was shot. Well, it was a justifiable homicide because that 13, 14-year-old had a gun and they were trying to rob somebody or carjack them or something like that. And they got to the last shot. I've used the analogy before. Doctors don't lump all cancer into one bucket. When we talk about cancers medically, we talk about a prostate cancer. We talk about certain types of melanomas. We talk about lung cancer. We can break them down into the type of cell that cancer is affecting or how that cell is mutated. And then we can look at causes. We can look at effects. We can look at treatments, all that stuff. That's why everything's broken down the way it is. With guns, they just throw everything to the same bucket because they got to pump the numbers up. Same way they do about, firearms deaths, and they throw in suicides. Well, I'm not advocating for but if someone is going to do that, the method doesn't matter. How about we focus on the things that actually push them to the point where they thought checking out was the best alternative to living? Can we focus on but again, they don't want to get near root causes. And by them, I mean these anti-gun pricks. Not to put too fine a point on that. Well, and Bob, this is a point that I'll argue with quite a bit when people want to push things into the realm of video games or something like that. If you are if you teach your children to be emotionally stable, and you teach your children how to cope with things, doesn't matter what game I put in front of them. It doesn't matter whether they're playing Call of Duty and other things. Now, if you have a mentally unstable person and you expose them to a video game, that's different. I played Grand Theft Auto back in the day. I never once thought, hey, this looks like a really good idea to go out and carjack people. There were mods in the game where you could run around with giant double-ended dongs and go whack people in the face. I never once thought that was a good idea. Pushing some of this on games or pushing this completely on games or something like that is, no, that argument really doesn't work. But again, you've got to kind of break people out into people who are emotionally stable. Even young kids, they may be flighty on some shit, but they're pretty well stable. They're normal kids that have coping skills to deal with adverse events. And then the others that don't have those skills, where you expose them to violence constantly, whether it's video games or movies, and then all of a sudden that becomes the fantasy. So you can't throw that again all in one bucket. Now, there is a big bucket of culture that we throw things into, and it definitely leads to a lot of the more gang involved stuff where you glorify carrying that gun and guarding the block and trap house. And so there's, as much as I want to throw some of this at education and teaching and stuff, that's only parts of it. And there's a lot of parts of that puzzle that have to fall into place to produce different types of people who will go out and commit different gun violence. With mass shooters, people who want to pick up a gun and they want to go out and kill as many innocent people as possible, they're in a completely different category. Most of the time, they're people with no coping skills. Their emotions are shot to hell. typically their families are just non-existent all over the place. They haven't been taught that life is hard and you're going to face adversity and you need to have these coping skills. They've been taught everything is about you and your feelings, so that when they're stuck in a position to where their feelings are being harmed, you're hurting someone's feelings is violent, then they can justify in their little fucking rat minds that when they go out and harm others, it's justified because others hurt their feelings, their body image, or whatever. So there's quite a few things at play there. Now, if we want to talk about just glorifying violence, and then you put someone in a position where they've got no home training whatsoever, their home's not in one chunk 95% of the time, mom and dad aren't there, they're allowed to run the streets, they're allowed to run wild, they've never been taught personal responsibility, they've never been held responsible for their actions, then yes, you could say some video games have some influence in something like that. Again, I hate to throw the video game thing sometimes, because I know plenty of people that have played violent video games their entire lives and have never went out there and decided, oh, this looks like a good idea. It's okay. That's Coop's rant. Let's get back to this. Yeah, dude, Dr. Thomas Sowell is a fucking legend. And maybe I need to do some of his stuff, because Thomas Sowell is exceptionally sharp. And he does lay out some of these distinctions very well. Yet another reason leftists don't like him worth a shit, because he really does lay out, kind of the progression of culture and how it affects certain things. And Thomas Sowell wasn't no pussy, and ain't no pussy. One of my favorite stories with him is, and I'll probably butcher the story right now. He was on a subway in New York, and some guy was being racist to him. And Thomas Sowell, he was a professor. I can't remember which college then, but old Thomas Sowell put them hands and laid that dude out completely, and went home. So yeah, Thomas Sowell, a couple other guys I can't think of right off the top of my head. Yes, and again, not real darlings of the left, because they're right.
Lump together murders and justifiable homicide. So a murder is a rapist who kills his victim. Justifiable homicide would be the potential rape victim
Bob, that's one of the big problems,
and shooting the rapist before he can attack her. And those seem like very different types of cases to me. And if you look at murders rather than homicides, you can see, for example, in 2019, you have 2,200 motor vehicle deaths, but you have about 1,400 firearm deaths for murders, accidents, and suicides. And you can see that gap in the other years. So what's the point of pushing this myth, okay? And I think the main point of pushing it is the idea is if you could just simply get rid of guns, you'd reduce these deaths. And you and I talked about this some when I was here in January, and that is every place in the world that's banned either all guns or all handguns has seen murder rates actually go up every single time. You'd think out of randomness, once or twice it would go down. And yet every single time it's gone up. So getting rid of all guns or banning guns, because it's basically, and the reason for that increase is that it's basically the most law-abiding citizens who you're primarily going to be taking guns away from. You may take a few guns away from criminals, but if you're primarily disarming law-abiding citizens, you may make it relatively easier for criminals to go and commit their types of crimes. And as we talked about, it's about as difficult to stop drug gangs from getting a hold of guns as it is to stop them from getting a hold of the illegal drugs that they sell. So, and how about with suicides? Well, obviously places like Washington, D.C. and Chicago have banned handguns for a while. Well, what happened to suicides? Well, firearm suicides went down. The most suicides are committed with handguns, but total suicides actually increased a little bit. I'm not going to go and argue that it increased suicides, but it surely didn't drop it. In fact, every single place in the world that's banned either all guns or all handguns has seen essentially no change
look
in
at the
total
suicide rate for men
in
in
Japan. They see changes in firearm suicides, but people switch. And one of the problems is that people often only look at firearm suicides, but it seems to me what you should care about is what happens to total suicides. And yet people find other ways, apparently pretty close substitute ways of committing suicide. So, anyway.
And this is something we hear quite a bit.
Here's
from
another myth
Giffords and others
and that is murder rates are worse in Republican states. It's basically Gavin Newsom from California kind of got this started. Anyway, here's just a couple quotes from media headlines. Politico: gun violence worse in red states. It's not even close.
Stop that for a second and let it play. But here's an interesting thought. The vast majority of the precursor chemicals to make fentanyl are produced in China, and they're flooding the markets with it. All of your Glock switches, or the majority of your Glock switches, are coming from China. They're flooding the markets with it. I can't sit in Columbus, Georgia on an average night without hearing what sounds to be a full auto Glock going off. But yet these things are illegal. But China is just flooding the market with it. People are getting them. If you ban every gun in the United States, and the cartels figured out that guns, are a big money maker, and they could tote, I don't know, how many Glocks could you fit in a backpack? Bringing those across the border, they can get those from other countries. They're getting plenty of other stuff from other countries. They're getting plenty of their own guns from other countries. They just flood the market. So merely banning the gun in the United States is about as ridiculous as me standing out in my front yard with an umbrella right now saying I'm stopping it from raining on the entire state of Alabama. Yeah, that pretty well fits. That would be the logic of it. Because even where the umbrella is, it's only stopping rain from hitting me. The rain's still falling across the umbrella and hitting the ground, so it's still raining all around me. That would be the effect of banning guns in the United States. Split alone toward BB gun. Yeah, dude, Sam, we used to do so much like Daisy Red Ryder, the old one pumps. Yeah, we were the original airsoft without the soft. When I was a kid, we got in trouble for that plenty of times, but we also knew you don't do that with an actual firearm. And yes, you grow out of it. This entire logic that the left uses on things, again, there is no logic, no real logic involved in any of their damn arguments at all. When you break them down, what you'll see is an emotional argument that looks really, really good. And when you dig down into the facts behind the argument, you figure out, oh, holy shit. Flying Rich says it all the time. something about if they had a bill that said that they were going to save puppies. Well, if you're reading the bill that they're actually killing puppies, that's every bit of anti-gun legislation or any legislation coming from the government, pretty much, where they tell you they're doing something for your safety or this is going to make things better. Nope, they're screwing you hard. No lube involved.
Forbes, red states have higher gun deaths than blue states. And it's true, if you look at 2020, the states that voted for Trump had a higher murder rate than the states that voted for Biden. When they had these news reports, the data for 2021 was already out, and for some reason people didn't look at that, but the reverse was true. The murder rate was higher in the states that voted for Biden than the states that voted for Trump. But there's a more important
states that voted for Trump.
More important.
How many of those were constitutional carry?
Law enforcement and generally the judiciary system is a local issue. The number of police you're going to hire, the policing policies are determined by local governments. District attorneys, like for Cook County, are elected locally. Kim Foxx was elected locally. So her decision who to go and charge for crimes, whether to go and ask for bail or not, are decisions that her office makes. Judges are elected locally. They're the ones who determine the sentences. They're the ones who will agree to what bail should be set for the individuals that are there. And so I would argue that overwhelmingly, the law enforcement activities are local decisions. And so go and look at how murder rates vary locally. So even if you take the data for 2020, you find that the counties that voted for Biden had a much, much higher murder rate than the counties that voted for Trump. And that's true whether you look at all counties or you look at large counties over 100,000 or 200,000 in population, you're going to see a similar breakdown. And you can break it down by the counties in the states that voted for Biden and the counties that voted in the states that voted for Trump, and you see a similar breakdown. In fact, in the states that voted for Trump, it's very heavily driven by those counties in those states that voted for Biden. So I'll give you a couple examples. You look at Louisiana, for example. The overall murder rate in Louisiana is relatively high. It's about 12 per 100,000, but it's overwhelmingly driven by Orleans Parish, which is the parish, the county for New Orleans, where the murder rate is about 50 per 100,000. It's also, to a lesser extent, driven by Baton Rouge, which is very.
Now, if you remember the arguments for constitutional carry in Louisiana, these idiot legislators wanted to basically make the entire city of New Orleans a gun-free zone. They were making the argument, yeah, the rest of the state, okay, you're going to pass constitutional carry, but let's make an exception for New Orleans and make that a gun-free zone. It's basically been a gun-free zone forever because the not being able to carry in bars or not being able to carry within so many feet of bars, all this stuff. I submit to the class that New Orleans is the place where law-abiding citizens need to carry a gun and have it with them at all times. If you do so, you will see those crime rates in New Orleans drop. Now, New Orleans is man, I love that city. I hated going there, though, just because of the crime in the city. It's a very historic city. It's beautiful. Food is amazing. The music scene in New Orleans is insane. But I only went into New Orleans a couple times. The whole time we lived in Slidell and Lacombe, right on the North Shore Lake Pontchartrain, I only went into New Orleans a couple times. Because of, even then, I understood the crime rate in New Orleans. And that's back, I wasn't carrying at the time. I don't, 18, 19. So I guess I could have carried at the time, but I wasn't carrying at the time. I guarantee you now, if I go into New Orleans, I'm carrying. Cops be damned. I still got family in Slidell. There's I'd love to go visit them. Bring my wife down. My wife's never been to Louisiana. Bring my wife down to Louisiana. Go hang out with my family. She's met them. They've been up here, but I'd love to go down there, just because the food, the music, everything, as far as the culture side of things, is freaking amazing. The bayous down there are absolutely beautiful. It's one thing that I seriously miss about living in Louisiana. Fishing brackish water, fishing Lake Pontchartrain, the bayous. It's beautiful. I don't miss the mosquitoes too much because, good God, the mosquitoes in that joint. But, you know, if I go back down there anytime, I'm carrying. I'm keeping my shit on me. Just dude, I am surprised I don't have any BB pellets embedded in me for sure. I can't remember how many times we got in trouble for, you know, a little bit of not so soft airsoft back in the day. Yeah, dude, Bob, I'm pretty damn sure I have seen mosquitoes back in Lacombe Bayou and a couple other places that were bigger than the fucking pelicans. Yeah. But, oh, man, I miss that place.
Similar. In Missouri, they also have a murder rate over 10 per 100,000. But again, St. Louis County has a murder rate of about 50 per 100,000, and that's driving the total for the state. Now, you know, often when people talk about the U.S. murder rate, I would argue it's fairly misleading because unlike most other countries, murders in the United States are extremely heavily concentrated in tiny areas. 2% of the counties in the United States, about 60 counties, account for about 23% of the US population, but they account for 56% of the murders. The five worst percent of the counties account for about 76% of the murders. And if you look within those 2% of the counties, for example, almost 2/3 of their murders occur within 10-block areas. Murders in the United States are extremely heavily concentrated in tiny areas, and it overwhelmingly.
Anyone want to take a guess on where those counties are typically located at? Maybe big Democrat-run cities and areas?
It has to do with gang activity, particularly drug gang activity. You know, by contrast, 54% of the counties have 0 murders.
Oh, shit, I love it, Jess.
15% of the counties have 1 murder. So about 70% of the counties in the United States have either 0 or 1 murder. And as I say, 5% of the counties account for 76% of the murders that are there. Now, I'd like to go through some simple things on mass public shootings, just to get into a little bit more detail. We often hear about things like AR-15s or whatever. 56% of the mass public shootings over the last 25 years don't involve, solely involve rifles of any type, you know, whether it's a hunting rifle or any type of rifle. Slightly less than 15% involve only handguns. And, you know, you can see other combinations of guns. The most deadly attacks aren't assault weapons. The most deadly attacks are attacks that involve multiple types of guns, handguns, rifles, and shotguns. If you look at mass public shootings, they overwhelmingly occur in places where guns are banned. And you can go to our website at crimeresearch.org. We have quotes from diaries and manifestos where time after time, these mass
We need to
murderers
roll through that one
explain
night.
why they picked the targets that they did. They may be crazy in some sense, but they're not stupid. Their goal is to go and kill as many people as possible so they can go and get media attention. And they know if they go to a place where guns are banned, they'll be the only people with a gun there. One of the frequent claims that we hear is the dangers from white supremacists or what have you. Whites make up a majority of the mass public shooters, though they are less than their share of the population. Non-Middle Eastern whites make about 59% of the US population. They make up 54% of the shooters. Blacks make up 13% of the US population. They make up slightly more than that, their share of the mass shooters, about 16%. Hispanics are way underrepresented. Hispanics make about 18% of the population. They make up about 10% of the shooters. Middle Eastern whites make up about 6% of the shooters, but only about 1% of the population, so they're overrepresented. And Asians are also overrepresented. If you look at the race of the victims, for whites, they're almost identical to their share of the shooters, 54 point something percent to 55%. Blacks are underrepresented in terms of their share of the victims, rather than 13% of the population. They make up about 10% of the victims. Hispanics are very close to their share of the population. So they're overrepresented relative to their share of the mass shooters. And non-Middle Eastern whites are slightly underrepresented in the share of the victims, even though they're overrepresented in terms of the shooters. As far as the age distribution, we very frequently hear about young people, but they are not overrepresented. The most likely group overrepresented wise are 21 to 25-year-olds. The next group is 36 to 40, and then 41 to 45. And then
and see, that's a really long data set. So this is from 98 to October 25th, 2023. It's a very long data set. What I would love to see on charts like this is the actual number of shootings that each one of those committed. And then I'd love to dive down into a chart and see, not just because he's looking at some very gross numbers, as in, not gross as in, it's yucky gross, very gross numbers here. But it's still really interesting.
You have 16 to 20. Now, one thing that I find interesting is because we very frequently hear about mental illness discussions, is that slightly over half of the mass murderers were actually seeing mental health care professionals within 6 months of their attack. And
this argument about mental illness, I will say this. A mentally well person doesn't go out and try to murder innocent people. So whether or not they were under treatment or whether they were not under treatment doesn't mean a whole lot to me. It could be a very short-term thing that threw them off their mental game or whatever, but that's not to say that, oh, these shooters were completely mentally healthy. No. Mentally healthy people don't go out and commit mass murders. Whether it was something very recent that happened, you name it, either way, us mentally healthy people just don't go out and murder innocent people. That's not something that an adjusted person or someone who's hanging on to being adjusted does.
Yet in not one single case did these mental health care experts identify any of these individuals as a danger to themselves or others? And some of these experts were internationally renowned experts, like.
And this is something that was brought up earlier about the Michigan school shooter and his parents getting both of them convicted for 4 counts of, was it reckless homicide? Basically, the court was saying that you should have known your son was going to do this, so therefore you're responsible. But here we are looking at it with diagnosed mental issues that were actually seeing psychiatrists, and not a single one of those psychiatrists said this person is going to commit a mass shooting. And those are mental health professionals. Do you think a parent that doesn't want to acknowledge the fact that their son's off his fucking shit and his cheese is off of his cracker, do you think they're capable of it? It's a very dangerous precedent that's being set.
The Santa Barbara mass murder, he was seeing 3 mental health care experts. One of them was the head of child psychiatric services at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, an internationally recognized experts on youth violence. And if you read the diaries and manifestos for these mass murders, you get some idea why these mental health care professionals are unable to identify these individuals. Mental health depends upon the model where people voluntarily
don't let that get out, Chet.
It'll
ruin my reputation.
These guys aren't looking for help. I'll give you a couple examples. The Buffalo mass murder from about 1.5 years ago. When he was in school, a teacher had asked him what he was going to be doing over the summer. And he said, well, he's going to find a school and he's going to shoot it up and then he's going to go and commit suicide. Obviously, the teacher was concerned. The teacher flagged him. He went and saw 2 mental health care professionals.
That's one of them big red flags on the field.
Professionals that he was just joking, that he wasn't serious about it. It was a bad joke, a stupid joke. He shouldn't have said it, and he apologized. And the
That's
mental
not
health
your
care
everyday
professionals
face
just
mask
took him at his
penalty.
word, and said, he's not a danger to himself or others. That's the type of thing you see over and over again, where the mental health care professionals just take these murders at their word. So unless they're incredibly stupid and go and tell the public health experts that they're going to go and
some
kill
of them
people,
have been,
they basically don't run
even
into
when
any
it was
problems.
reported
You
to
have
law
people like the
enforcement,
Santa Barbara killer,
nothing was done.
Was in his diaries was talking about how easy it was just to go and tell these mental health care professionals that he wasn't planning on doing anything, and they let him go on it. One of the things that you see brought up after these mass public shootings is the call for background checks on the private transfers of guns. After the Valdi report came
Universal
out
background
finally in
checks.
January of this year, President Biden listed background checks on the private transfers of guns as his #1 solution that he wanted to have to these mass public shootings. You can look it up. The Uvalde attack wouldn't have been stopped by having background checks on the private transfers of guns.
No. This dude, this piece of shit, bought his guns legally through an FFL, from what I understand. Universal background checks. How is the government going to track which firearms I own right now and which firearms I have disposed of in a given time period, year, 6 months, whatever? Are you going to send out a form that makes me swear every time that I have these guns in my possession and I have not sold these guns? Well, even then I can lie on that form. So all you're looking to do is charges after the fact. It's not going to stop anything. Unless you use this registration system to just confiscate all firearms. Yeah, I believe that's where it's going. I don't have a whole lot of faith in this next election. So if Biden and the Democrats actually succeed in holding on to the presidency and then gain the House in this next election, which I believe is highly likely with the amount of bullshit they're pulling, there's a lot of legislation that people say, oh, that will never pass. Get ready, Buttercup, because it's going to pass. And then you're going to have to make the same decision that people have made in Illinois and some other places where they had banned all these other guns and said, hey, you got to register them. You're going to have to make the personal decision to either register your shit or my advice is civil disobedience. I'm not registering a damn thing at all. Not doing it. Period. Nope. I had to have another conversation with myself. Nope, not doing it. Fluffy, I do not have any favor in it, man. And yeah, Matt, what's up, my brother? Yeah, stuff will get ugly, to say the least.
Nobody in the press asked him about it, though. And, why you're bringing this up as a solution for Uvalde when it obviously wouldn't have had an effect there. But it's not just that. All the mass public shootings this century, none of them, even if the law had been in place and been perfectly enforced, would have been stopped. And yet, for some reason, it keeps on being brought up. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about background checks because everybody wants to stop bad people.
I'll let this play some more in just a second. The idea of the universal background check has nothing to do with stopping anything. It has to do with they put this through. Then they turn around to you and go, well, these background checks aren't stopping anything. Now we need a registry of all firearms. And then that comes to confiscation. That's how those steps are going to go. It's got nothing to do with stopping people from doing absolutely mind-numbingly evil things. Nothing. But it comes up every time we see a shooting. Oh, we got to have universal background checks. Wait a second. They bought it from an FFL. They went through a background check. Oh, no, but we need universal background checks because they know universal background checks are useless without a registration. And when the registration doesn't work, oh, well, we can't track these firearms. So now we got a list of them and we got to go collect them. And if you think a lot of your local law enforcement places won't go collect firearms, let's refer to Coop's original thought on fixing stupid. Go to your kitchen, grab the heaviest frying pan you can find, and beat yourself in the face till you can have a rational thought. Cops already enforce plenty of unconstitutional laws. Do you think they're going to stop at that? Wire tight, what's up, my brother? Again, we get back to the insanity of some of these arguments. The only way you stop a mass shooter is to shoot them once they start their attack. Now, they get to pick the time, they get to pick the place. Right now, with gun-free zones, they get to pick the victims. Why don't we allow people who would be victims to not be unarmed victims and at least have a chance? And we hear this crap coming from the left. Well, none of these mass shootings are really stopped by, armed citizens. Well, because they happen in gun-free zones, and these armed citizens don't want to go to jail, so they leave their guns in their vehicles or they leave them at home. You completely disarmed them, made them fish in a barrel, and then you're complaining that the fish in the barrel aren't stopping the shooter. But there hasn't been a single mass shooter that just got so fucking tired of shooting innocent people that they killed themselves. There's always a force that is applied to stop that mass shooter. It's ridiculous. Oh yeah, there are many of them in chess. They will use the it's the law. I'm just following orders, Yavul, and will completely enforce something like that. I recommend at that point treating them like any other thug breaking into your house. Do with that information what you will.
Dangerous people from being able to go and obtain guns. The problem is that the current system is a mess, and one frequent claim you'll hear from President Biden and others is that background checks have stopped 4 million dangerous or prohibited people from buying guns. And that's simply false. What they should say is that background checks have, you've had initial denials of 4 million people. But that's very different than saying you're stopping dangerous people from doing it. Basically, you're talking about false positives. It's one thing to stop a felon from buying a gun. It's another thing to stop somebody simply because they have a roughly phonetically similar name and similar birthday to a felon. And the problem is that these errors overwhelmingly occur against minorities. People tend to have names similar to others in their racial groups. Hispanics have names similar to other Hispanics. Blacks tend to have names similar to other Blacks. 34% of Black males are felons. You have 18% of Hispanic males are felons. 6% of white
Bob, you
males
got to post
are
something
felons.
more about that.
3% of Asian males are felons.
Because I don't think I've ever looked at that.
So who are you most likely to have?
Or I might have, and I
these
just don't
false
recognize the
positives?
name.
You're going to be most likely to have them when you're talking about comparing, Hispanic males or Black males, where law-abiding males are simply more likely
Bob,
to have a roughly phonetically similar name and similar birthday to somebody who's prohibited. And people who have worked in the systems know these errors. I have a
will
quote
make
there
it to
from
where
Reagan
you can
Dunn,
post said link.
who was the first person who ran Project Safe Neighborhoods.
Matter of fact, I gotta get fluffy too.
Did background checks in the same way that the federal government does, they'd be sued out of existence under federal law. If they had an error rate that was 100th the error rate that the federal government has.
Hold on, what happened?
There's an easy fix to this. All you have to do is have the federal government have to meet the same standards for doing background checks that private companies have to meet. No private company would go and look at roughly phonetically similar names and similar birthdays to go and determine whether.
Yes, let's cover this real fast because I'm, Wiretype may not have been in a whole lot of my chats, although I lurk in his all the time too. So, someone I can't remember who it was referred to my chats as the Blue Wrench Mafia the other night. If you're hanging out in my chats long enough, I want my chats to be more kind of like a mosh pit, to where, like Bob mentioning something about an experiment, I want him to be able to post a link. If you're in here long enough and I trust you, I want you there. I want you to be able to do that. And that can lead down to a bunch of rabbit holes. But with all you guys, I'm cool with rabbit holes. If it's some dude I don't know, nah, brother, hang out for a couple of streams or something. Let me make sure that you're a normal lunatic like me, and then, yeah, you'll get a wrench. Because I want everybody to be able to share information. I want people to be able to share a link. I want people to be able to be involved in it. So that's why pretty much anybody in my chat, if you're hanging out long enough, you're getting a wrench. I never expect to be popular enough where I've got like 900 wrenches in the chat. If I ever get that way, this world is so going to hell. But I do want everybody to be able to do that. Matter of fact, I got to hit Wiretype just because he showed up, and I know Wiretype's content, and Wiretype's a freaking awesome dude. So, but yeah, so if you looking back, if someone's coming in the chat or they're just listening right now, lurking, and all of a sudden they jump in and they see everybody's got a wrench, yes, that's all I'll say is yes. If they're cool, they're getting a wrench. Someone say rabbit hole, dude. We go down them constantly. Hey, brother, like I said, I seriously want my chats especially when everybody's in and everybody's communicating, to be an absolute mosh pit of information. And if I'm talking about something and maybe I'm off topic or maybe I'm off key on something, I'm getting something wrong, I want someone to be able to post a link and we can look at the link and go through it and get me back on track. So the same way if I post an invite to StreamYard on there, I want anybody to feel like they can bounce in. Now, I will say this. They're about the only thing that would really get you kicked out of one of my chats or kicked off a stream or something like that is to be a racist prick. Otherwise, I don't care. I go off the rails all the time, talk about dumb shit, use a hell of a lot of language. But that's just the way it is. If you don't like that, you probably don't need to hang out with me.
Whether you might be prohibited from being able to go and have a gun. But gun control groups will fight against having the federal government have to meet the same standards. There's another issue that's similar, and that is the cost of the background checks. In Washington, D.C., where they're voting on it, it costs $125. You'll see them ranging across states from anything from $56 to $225. California is one outlier where it's $20, but that's because there's a price control. You're not allowed to charge more than $20, even though it costs on average about $80 for them to do that. And you can't refuse to do a background check or they'll take away your firearms license. So it's just a way of imposing taxes on dealers to try to drive some of them out of business. But here's the deal. As an economist,
dude, Bob, I have heard about
I
that.
would say you should.
I'm reading the link now.
Well, let me back up a second. You believe that background checks reduce violent crime, okay? Well, if you believe that background checks reduce violent crime, presumably it reduces it for everybody, not just the law-abiding person who's going out of their way to find a dealer to go and transfer the gun to somebody else. And as an economist, I would say the people who benefit should be the ones who pay for it. If everybody benefits in terms of reduced crime, pay for it out of general revenue. Don't make the law-abiding citizen who's trying to obey the law have to bear the full burden of that fee that's there. In addition, if you want somebody to do this because you think it's good, you don't tax them. You don't make them pay a big fee. You know, if anything, you reward them for doing it, but you surely don't make them have to pay a big fee. And so do you think making people have to pay $125 or $100 or $80 encourages them to go and do the background check? And the answer is no.
And just because a thought hit me here, if the government really wants to stop bad people from getting guns, and there are private sales, how come I can't, if I'm going to sell a gun to somebody as a private individual, how come I can't just get on my phone or my computer, put in their information, and run a background check on them? Or see if the firearm, or if I'm buying a firearm and firearms are reported stolen, serial numbers and all that, why can't I search a serial number and see whether or not a firearm is stolen or not? If the government was really about safety, why don't me as a public citizen, why don't I have access to that information? To where if I wanted to buy a firearm from somebody, they can run my background check. And all they have to get is a pass or fail. They don't have to get my complete information. All they have to get is a pass or fail. And that would shut down a sale if I didn't pass. But also, if I'm going to buy a firearm from somebody, why can't I not enter in the serial number, make model of a gun, and see whether or not that firearm was stolen or not? Because someone can look completely normal, look like your average law-abiding person, and be a dirtbag. Oh, I'm getting rid of this gun, and I just don't want it anymore. I don't like the way this shoots, and I'm getting rid of it. And you go to buy the gun from them. Later on, you get pulled over. You have the gun on you. They run serial numbers. Oh, shit, this gun's stolen. My ass is going to prison. And it doesn't matter whether I meant to purchase a stolen gun or not. I am still in possession of stolen property. Just thoughts. Another little rabbit hole.
So again, I would go and argue, pay for it out of general revenue. So often in the gun control debate, you'll hear gun control proponents say they just want reasonable regulations. I'm happy with background checks. I just want reasonable fixes for it. Get rid of the mistakes. There's no reason that 99% of the people who are trying to buy guns are unfairly stopped.
Yeah, that's another
Now
one,
you
Bob.
can appeal, but most people are going to have to hire a lawyer.
Products
You're talking
illegally
about $3,000
produced
on up
being
to go and hire a
serialized with
lawyer
real
to get
numbers.
that fixed. You're basically talking about middle class
But
and poor Black
on the
and
grounds
Hispanic
of
males that are
what
being
would actually
discriminated against
help
and stopped
solve
from
issues
errors in the
and
system through no
what they need
fault
to
of
go
their own. And
other
you know,
legal
these fees,
processes.
$125
Me
or
being able to search for a
$100 might not
stolen
stop
gun
you or I from getting a
would
gun.
alleviate
But
more issues.
the very people that my research indicates who benefit the most, the people who are the most likely victims of violent crime, poor Blacks who live in high crime urban areas, making them have to pay, you know, another $100.
And it could be the person selling the gun bought the gun
They
from
make
someone
the
else and
difference
didn't
between
realize
whether
that
or
it was
not they're
stolen.
going to be able to legally obtain a gun. You know, Democrats often will talk about voter IDs and how even free voter IDs are onerous for poor minorities and prevent them from being able to go and vote. Well, if a free ID stops people from voting, obviously you have to have an ID for buying a gun, and that's not free. Plus you have to pay these other fees. You know, what do they think is happening in those cases? So I would argue, and I've told gun control people for 25 years that they could easily get these background checks on private guns transfers passed if they made two changes. Had the federal government have to meet the same standards for doing background checks that private companies have to meet, and pay for the cost of these background checks out of general revenue. So anyway, let me just give you an example of the costs of fees and the impact that they have on gun ownership. So you're in Illinois. In Illinois, about 4% of the adult population has a concealed carry permit. In neighboring Indiana, now it's actually 23%. I need to update that. Why the difference? Well, to go to get a concealed carry permit in Illinois, the total cost for a 5-year permit is about $450 when the fee and the training. In Indiana, it literally costs $0. You don't have to pay a fee. There's no you don't have to pay for the background check. The background check's free. So you make it more costly, fewer people do it. Price of apples go up, people buy fewer apples. But it's much more than that. It also changes the mix of people who get permits. Who gets permits in Illinois? When you're talking about $450 and 16 hours of training and stuff like that, you're basically talking about people who live in the suburbs.
Not your average person working
in
at
Indiana,
McDonald's.
You see a much, much higher rate of permits in heavily poor, heavily minority zip codes. Well, you know, if you're going to reduce crime, it's just not the percent of people with permits, because the more people with permits, the riskier it is for criminals to go and commit crimes. But it's also who has the permits. If I have a suburb where there's no crime and I have 100% of the population with permits, you're not going to see any reduction in crime. You have to have the people who are the likely victims of crime where the crime's occurring get the permits. So in Illinois, not only do you have few people with permits, but it's people with permits in areas where there's little crime. In Indiana, you're going to see a much bigger reduction in crime from letting people carry concealed handguns, because in Indiana, they have the rules set up so that poor Blacks and Hispanics who live in high crime areas are able to go and get permits. So you have, you know, the irony is in Illinois, Democrats control the entire process of the permit rules, and they claim that they care about poor and minorities, but who do they think they're stopping with the cost of $450 to be able to go and get a permit to be able to go and carry, on top of all the other fees that you have in terms of the background checks, in terms of the FOID card, in terms of everything else that you have here in Illinois for people to be able to go and carry. You know, I can just show you, here's an example from Texas. Texas, these are the percentage of the permit holders that are Black. They've had two big changes in permit rules in Texas over this period of time. One was reducing the number of training hours from 10 to 4. You could see before that, the percentage of the population that was Black that had of permit holders that were Black was falling. It stopped falling as soon as they reduced the training requirement. And then when they reduced the fee from $140 to $40, you immediately saw an increase and then an increase after that. And that's what you see in other places. Let's skip this here. So since we've been talking about mass shootings, I'm going to show you a short video and then we can talk.
You've probably heard that America has the most mass shootings in the world. That's often given as a reason for more gun control. But economist John Lott looked into that claim, and he says it's a myth based on one bogus study.
The United States has the most mass shootings.
By far, the most public mass shootings. You don't see murder on this kind of scale with this kind of frequency in any other advanced nation on earth.
Where'd that claim come from? Obama and everyone else base it on.
A study done by University of Alabama professor Adam Langford.
University of Alabama professor Adam Langford.
This is Adam Langford.
I studied 171 countries for more than 40 years, 1966 to 2012. And essentially the answer was, not surprisingly, the United States has by far the most public mass shooters.
His claim received coverage in hundreds of news stories.
Yeah.
But all these people were misled by Langford. Langford's study claimed that since 1966, there were 90 mass public shooters in the United States, more than any other country. Langford counted 202 shooters in the rest of the world. Langford claimed complete data were available for 171 countries. But how did Langford find every shooting in all these countries, most of which don't speak English? And how did he find all the cases in the years before the internet? Few governments collect this data. Finding complete data for mass public shootings in just one developing country, say India in the 1970s, would be an incredible feat. Many of these shootings would have been reported only in local outlets, in the local language.
That shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut.
On the other hand, United States mass public shootings are well documented and hard to miss. If Langford undercounted foreign cases because he missed finding old newspapers or had trouble with language barriers, his paper's entire conclusion that the United States had the most mass public shootings would fall apart. Many journalists and researchers asked Langford for his data. Not only did he refuse to share a list of his cases or even the number of shootings he found in each country, which are nowhere in his paper, he even refused to share an explanation for how he found those cases. That's academic malpractice. Asked if he used foreign languages to search for these shootings, Langford stated, "My data were not limited to English language searches." Asked what languages he used, Langford refused to provide that information. "This is all the assistance I can provide at this time," Langford said. Look, I've researched crime for decades, and I've published dozens of peer-reviewed academic articles on the subject. Langford won't even respond to my emails with simple questions. Now, maybe he doesn't want to talk to me because I'm well known for my research, more guns, less crime. But Langford has refused to share his list of shooters and methods, even with strong gun control advocates. This all seemed very suspicious to me. So the think tank that I run, the Crime Prevention Research Center, researched it. Unlike Langford, we took a lot of time to find all the foreign cases we could. We even got translators to identify cases. Using the same definition of mass public shooters Langford used, 4 more people killed in a public place, not part of some other type of crime, we found that he grossly undercounted foreign attacks. We counted well over 3,000 shooters, at least 15 times more shooters as Langford claimed.
31% of total shooters, despite the fact that we only have 5% of the world's population.
Of the 86 countries where we've identified any mass public shootings occurring, the United States ranks 62nd. Norway, Finland, Switzerland, and Russia are European countries with significantly higher rates of murders
Now remember,
from
it's
mass public
rates,
shootings.
percentage based.
The explanation is
Not that they have
firearm
a
ownership rate.
overall
When
more
Langford's
or
data
a
are
higher
fixed,
number.
there's no relationship between gun ownership rates and mass public shooters. There's a lesson here. Langford's critical but simple error could have been picked up if journalists had only demanded his data and methods before publicizing his study. Journalists should learn to be skeptical. In the meantime, we should all be skeptical of news coverage of studies like this.
That's one of the, and again, John's nicer than me on this, because I know good and damn well this dishonesty from these people is absolutely intentional. It's not a mistake. They didn't just fail to follow up on a source. They have a narrative, and they will use any twisted ass data they can possibly use to push said narrative. This isn't a mistake. It isn't, oh, well, we forgot to follow up on a source. Maybe we should ask someone about data. No, they have a narrative. They will use anything that sounds like data to push the narrative, because the narrative is all that matters. And that's what happens when you take someone, this situation here, when you take someone who is focused on data and actual facts, and they look at these so-called data from the anti-gun side, and you figure out the data from the anti-gun side is absolute horseshit, and it always has been. Go figure. Another reason, oh man, I'd so love to interview John Lott. And I would be as professional and as serious as I had to be for it, because I don't want to damage his reputation. But it would be a very interesting conversation. At least to me, it would be. But other people aren't data nerds like I can be.
Simply confirm what journalists and people want to hear.
Before releasing this video, I also asked Langford for his data and methods for finding shootings in foreign language media. Langford would not provide the information. You've probably heard.
Oops. Okay. Well, I appreciate your time here, and I'm happy to try to answer some questions. And just so you know, you don't have to ask just questions about my discussions either in January or now. You can also ask me questions, because I know you've had other speakers, and I'm happy to try to deal with their comments that were there. So anyway, appreciate your time, and please feel free to ask me any questions. I would
be interested to know who those other speakers were and see their lectures.
Oh, okay. I have a question. So a lot of people, when citing like sources for anything like a statistic, they'll often cite like a media organization, like what, and like you just mentioned or showed us in the video, that a lot of them, they actually are they are incorrect. So how would I, like, where should I look for more accurate like coverage of studies?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, you can go to our website at crimeresearch.org, where, you know, what we try to do.
Good. What's up, my brother?
The conclusion is, but try to go through and explain, you know, how the data is put together and what have you. I've been an academic most of my life. I've had positions at Stanford, University of Chicago. I was at Chicago for 5 years. I've been at Wharton, Yale, UCLA. And I've worked in the federal government. I've been chief economist for the U.S. Sentencing Commission, and I was senior advisor for research and statistics in the Department of Justice. And, you know, most people don't know what the terms mean, okay, what they imply. I'll give you a simple example. You know, you'll frequently hear that most murders are acquaintance murders. And when people hear that, they think about people who are somehow emotionally close to each other, you know, husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend. Nothing could be further from the truth. Most acquaintance murders involve rival gang members. It's very common for the members of one gang to know who the members of another gang are. Okay. Acquaintance murders involve prostitutes and johns or pimps. They'll involve things like, I'll give you one that will blow your mind, and that is, take a cab driver. If a cab driver is murdered by somebody who's in the back of his cab, that's classified as an acquaintance murder because there was a perceived financial relationship that existed between the two parties. If somebody comes up to the side of the cab and murders the cab driver, that's classified as a stranger murder there because there is no perceived financial relationship that existed between the parties. My guess is most people have no clue, what's included in the definition of acquaintance murder that's there. For cab drivers, in many years, being a cab driver is the most dangerous profession in the United States. So, it's, you have things like that. And, earlier I talked about, the definition of what a mass shooting is. Most people don't know, how the gun violence archive is defined. They don't even know the source
we've
that the
touched
media
on
is
that
relying
before.
on for that. And they don't know how it differs from how the FBI will define what a mass public shooting is going to be. So, anyway, that's what we try to do at our organization.
And that's why John's such a good resource on this stuff, because he does break all of that down.
There are other questions, and I'm happy to take questions, not just
That's
about
like Paul
our
from
stuff
Legally
that
Armed
we've been
America.
going
He
over
actually
either in
got
January or now, but I know
the
you've had
Gun Violence
another number
Archive
of
to kind of
other
change
lectures that you've been given.
some of their
I assume,
terminology.
you may have questions
And
about.
I think he's
or
still
how it
supposed
fits
to
in
interview
or
the guy
whatever.
from the Gun Violence Archive, which is something I definitely can't wait to see.
Anybody?
If you're not following Paul from Legally Armed America,
I
you need
was
to be
wondering
following
about
Paul.
the statistic you mentioned at the very
Matter
beginning
of fact,
about
I'll see if I can
86% of
dig him up
the
real fast and
firearms
throw him in
used
the
in
chat.
cops TV shows were machine guns. I was wondering, did you count? Is that the number of guns, or is that the number of shooting incidents in the shows that involve machine guns, or where did that number exactly come from?
So number of guns that are fired in those TV cop shows on ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox during the 2021-2022 season.
There he is.
Okay, so it's the number of the firearms themselves, not the scenes.
Not the scenes. Yeah, the number of times guns are fired. 86% of those were
And
machine
here
guns.
is Paul's channel. Legally Armed America.
It's just.
I know a lot of you guys probably follow him already.
Assault
They're going to throw it out
weapons,
there
and then
anyway.
they'll show a machine gun being fired, or they'll talk about AK-47s or AR-15s. Those aren't, I guess they want to convince people that the assault weapons there are machine guns, whereas, they're just semi-automatic guns. Like about 85% of the guns sold in the United States are semi-automatic guns.
So
And
we
the
have.
rest- Go
So
ahead.
sorry. I know that we have a team doing safe storage.
Oh, I'm happy to talk about safe storage.
Okay, maybe they're absent. We do have a team doing safe storage. Could you speak to that, Dr. Lott?
Sure.
The team that's looking at it are, they are thinking of ways, aside from what's already on the books, that would make child access less accessible, I would say, whether you're in foster home, whether you're in school, whether you're any place. Could you speak to the issue of safe storage and how additional legislation may or may not work and what that would look like?
Sure. Well, if you look over the last decade, let's say from 2010 on, what you'll find is that there are about.
All right, and I'll tell you what, guys, we've been going for a while. I'm going to let him get through this, and then I got to bounce. I got to go get out of here. I got to pick kiddos up and stuff, and who knows? We'll definitely cover more stuff from John in the future, but I'm going to let him cover the safe storage thing, and then I got to bounce.
30-some accidental gun deaths on average over that period of time involving children under age 10. For children under age 15, you're going to find something in the 50 range. And, but even those numbers are a little bit misleading in the sense that about 2/3 of the children under age 10 who are die from accidental gunshots are actually shot by adult males, usually in their mid to late 20s. And most of those adult males have criminal backgrounds, and most are either drug addicts or alcoholics. So most of them, it's illegal for them to own guns to begin with. But the thing is, gun locks or safe storage or whatever isn't going to stop, a 29-year-old male who may be illegally owning a gun.
Well, I got it downloaded,
go and get access to his own gun and firing it. When you're talking about accidental gunshots in the United States,
the first little bit of it, and sounds
accidentally fires a gun and either kills themselves or another child, you're talking about something that's going to be around 10 to 12 on average over those years. And the thing is, that's actually slightly less risky than children dying from lightning strikes. Now, with lightning strikes, I'm not going to go and tell a child to go and walk through an open field during a lightning storm with an umbrella. That would be kind of stupid to go and do something like that.
Big ass steel
but it's
rod
pretty rare.
There, but okay.
And I would just ask you, if you were to go and think, if I didn't tell you those numbers to begin with, and you were to go and guess that most American households own guns, and the gun ownership rate is actually higher in households that have children, what would you have guessed the accidental gun death rate for children actually firing the gun and killing themselves or others would be? When I usually ask people those questions, I get numbers in the hundreds or thousands that are there, rather than what you'll find if you go to the Centers for Disease Control website and look over, the average over the last decade or so.
And see, that's another thing that's dishonest about the way the CDC will categorize data sometimes. Because see, when I ran the numbers, I ran them from zero, like newborn infant, all the way to, I think I did 18 years old, and just didn't. The cause was accidental. So even in that 0 to 18-year-olds, and you add an accidental when you put firearms in, you're ending up with like 130 something deaths. But that does include older kids having negligent discharges. That includes parents having negligent discharges and harming their children. That includes someone shooting into an occupied home and killing a child. That's not this toddler. This is a frame, YouTube, I'm fixing to pull. That's not a toddler pulling out a gun. This is a frame. That's not a toddler finding a gun and doing their thing where they point it at themselves and pull the trigger. So even those numbers aren't drilled down the way that they should be. Like John's talking about there, you're looking at 20 something a year in a country of over 340 million people with over 420 million guns. And then the numbers are going to stay pretty well the same. Your children are more likely to get harmed by household chemicals than by a firearm in the home. That's hard data. Matter of fact, I'd bet money, if I could find all the data right now, that more children, say toddlers, die drowning in the home through toilets, buckets, bathtubs, sources that will hold water inside a home. I will guarantee you more of them die by drowning in the home than by finding a firearm and actually injuring or killing themselves with it. And a lot of that is alleviated by teaching your children about firearms and teaching them that you don't touch those. Not that firearms are bad, but kind of like you don't go run out in the driveway while cars are running around. Cars aren't bad. However, you could be injured or killed by them if you are not being safe around them. Again, we'll get back to the fact we have an absolutely intellectually dishonest. They flat out fucking lie to you, media. And you have people running around thinking, oh, these guns, these innocent children, they're just dying by unsecured firearms all the time. No, they're not. If you want to break it down, get into data, get into hard numbers. When you look at hard numbers, then you can look at causes and effects. No, it's not even close. It's nowhere near close. I'm a dumbass welding instructor. If I can figure this out, you think these brainiacs in the media couldn't do some very general research and figure it out? And it's not on accident. This is all narrative driven for these people. And they will lie just like these politicians will lie dead to your face and never miss a beat.
Something like that, because you'll get 1 year or another will be higher or lower. But what happens is that when you have an accidental gun death involving a child, it will get national news coverage. And I think it causes people to think they're more common than they are. How many of you have seen Bowling for Columbine? Show of hands.
I still have to watch that one day.
I guess it's from an earlier era. Anyway, Bowling for Columbine has a scene in it where Michael Moore talks about a 6-year-old taking a gun to school and shooting another child to death. And they interview the child's mom. What they leave out of the story is that the boy who took the gun to school, his mom was a drug addict. She was not around there. He was being raised by his uncle, who was running a crack house. And what had happened was one of the
crackheads aren't securing their firearms.
The crack house had passed out in the living room floor and had his gun next to him on the floor. And the 6-year-old had picked up the gun and taken it to school with him when he had done the shooting.
Absolutely, Fluffy.
So even when you're talking about these 10 to 12
I've got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old
that are occurring.
What's up, brother? One car. What's up?
Are in what you would call criminogenic type households. These are not normal households. So the rate that you're going to have these types of problems in normal law-abiding households is even lower than the numbers that I was talking about before. But here's the problem. If you require that people have to lock up their guns, and they want to have the guns locked and stored separately, you make it less able for people to access their guns for protection. When states pass those laws, what you find is that criminals become emboldened to attack people in their homes. And you actually see an increased number of deaths, an increased number of other crimes, and you don't see a drop in accidental gun deaths or suicides involving young people. Let me
he
give
didn't
you
lose his gun in one car. He threw it in a
We
dumpster.
have data on what's called hot burglaries. These are burglaries that occur while they're in the dwelling. And we have data across many countries. And I'll just give you a comparison for two. Compare the United Kingdom with the United States. The burglary rate in the UK is about twice the burglary rate in the United States. 60% of the burglaries in the UK occur while people are at home. In the United States,
a couple guys posted those stats in the chat.
Why the difference? Well, American burglars spend about twice as long casing a home before they break in compared to their British counterparts. Why do they spend so much time casing a home before they break in? Does anybody have an idea why these American burglars spend so much time? And I'll give you another fact. When do burglaries occur in the United States? They overwhelmingly occur in the middle of the day.
Oh,
in the UK, they very frequently occur in the evening. Anybody have any thoughts on why the differences, those differences occur?
Pick me, I know.
Well, if you look at surveys of burglars who are in prison in both those countries, what you'll find is that burglars in the United States are worried about getting shot. So how do you avoid getting shot? Well, one way you avoid getting shot is you make sure nobody's home before you break in. And you can do that by casing the home before you break in. And also you can do that by
hey, Jess,
breaking in
I will
during those
teach you how
times
to
of the
weld.
day
I can do it
when you don't think people are going to be at
over
home.
the computer.
In the UK, they're not worried about that. They break in when the people are home. And one of the reasons why they break in when people are home is, let's say the person has a safe. Well, how do you get in the safe? One way to get in the safe is to force the person to tell you how to open the safe. How do you do other things. They may have other things hidden inside the home. And so they force the people there to go and tell them where the things are. So they actually have an incentive, burglars, to kind of break in normally when people are at home, because then they're more successful in stealing stuff from them. But American burglars, want to avoid people when they're in their home. So, and so the problem that you face is that these safe storage laws actually result in more deaths, result in more harm to the victims that are there. And, I understand the desire to make things safer, but, unfortunately, they have the opposite effect. And so, I would go and argue, look, does it make sense sometimes for people to lock up their guns? Of course it does. But if I live in a high crime urban area like Chicago, it may not make much sense.
What's up, Trent?
You may be
I do gotta
endangering
get out of
people's
here in a minute.
lives in those areas. If I live in a high crime urban neighborhood,
Otherwise, I'd throw an invite
force
in the
them,
chat.
mandate
We'd get a
that
whole
they have to
panel
lock up
together.
their guns and store their ammunition separately.
Sure.
I'm not
Well,
saying
and
that can't
that
happen
we
at
know
some
that
point
that
tonight.
state laws vary quite a bit depending on what part of the
Right.
country you're in. As you know, where Lake Forest is, we are very close to Highland Park, where there was a
Sure.
shooting during the 4th of July parade. A number of faculty and staff were at the parade. And so, when someone is looking at, wow, why doesn't somebody do something? When you talk about how do you prevent something like that from happening, what is the most effective way of making sure something like that doesn't happen again?
Well, I mean, the Highland one was an unusual one with somebody shooting a rifle from a distance away. But I would recommend just read the diaries and manifestos for these mass murders. Time after time, they make it very explicit. I mean, I want somebody to provide me with a benign explanation why the media doesn't cover these things. I would think it's newsworthy to go
it's
and,
not
if you're going to
benign.
cover the diary and manifesto, to go.
All right, I'll tell you what, I got to do this because I got to get out of here and I got to pick kiddos up and I got to go do the family thing for a little while. But that's John Lott again is an excellent resource. I recommend everybody who is kind of involved in our arguments about firearms to check him out and use him as a resource. Because again, his isn't this narrative driven kind of data sets. In other words, he doesn't come up with a narrative and then force the data into the narrative. He just follows the data, which is the way honest people would go about things. Again, when you deal with the anti-gun crowd, Giffords, Brady, a bunch of these others, they come up with a narrative and then they try to shoehorn all the data into the narrative, no matter how much they have to manipulate the data. And that's, I'll use the term intellectually dishonest sometimes, but the fact is, it is very much driven because these people are absolutely anti-gun and they will lie straight to your face to push that narrative. It is intentional. It's not, oh man, maybe this source would have been a little better than that source. Maybe I should use another source. Maybe I should have researched the source. No, it's absolutely a lie. Because their ultimate goal is to completely do away with personal firearms ownership. Brady started out to ban all handguns, period. And then maybe that's a whole nother topic for a show one night. But they did. That's how they started out. Brady wanted to ban all handguns, period. All handguns gone. You can't have it. If it's not a long gun, if it's a rifled barrel and doesn't have more than a 16-inch barrel, nope, can't have that. If it's a shotgun, doesn't have an 18-inch barrel, nope, can't have that. Any gun like that. Yes, it is absolute malice versus incompetence. And yeah, his books are available on audio. So if you've got an Audible account like I do, and God knows I listen to a lot of books on Audible. These days I try to stay more science fiction, fantasy, stuff like that. Like things like Galaxy's Edge. I'm going back through and listening to the Arisen series. Any number of different books like that. But just something to get kind of my mind on other things. Much like the music stream I'm talking about that we'll do one night. But yeah, if you've got Audible, you can go through, and I listen to a lot of them because I'm constantly working during the day. I do stuff like this a lot in the evenings or whenever I can these days. So I don't sit around and read a lot anymore. I was never a huge reader before. Matter of fact, I've got 2 books right here that I have got to read. And it's going to be painful. And the reason I would read these books is to merely go through and shoot holes all in their facts. But the American Carnage book and the Beating Guns, 2 completely anti-gun books that I've got to get into. Oh, but there's only so much stupidity my brain can handle. So it's going to take me forever to get through those. And I'm kind of thinking about doing a series, basically chapter by chapter with these books, where I'll read a chapter, go through the chapter, produce a video on it. But me and producing videos sometimes, well, that's why I do lives. So anyway, guys, I do got to get out of here. You perps, as usual. And if people ever wonder why I call you guys perps, is because your government thinks you're nothing but perpetrators. They just haven't caught yet. Hashtag ATF on that. So that's the whole. And if some people in here have never heard it before, that's why I call people perps, because your government considers you a criminal. They just haven't caught, prosecuted, and thrown in jail yet. Don't believe me? Yeah, look at the way our government treats us. 100% facts, kids. Oh, Bob, yeah, dude. I was at that congressional hearing the other day where they, went through this other set of lists we could be on. Hey, more power to it, man. I can be on plenty of them. I'm surprised, which I haven't tried flying in a little while, so I could be on the no-fly list. All you have to do is disagree with your government. You're on a list. Trust me. Oh, yeah, one car. Domestic violent extremists, militant violent extremists, my MVE stuff. I wish I had my other plasma cut sitting here. My MVE of the month plasma cut. I sent one to a dude not too long back. And I've got a few others, MVE of the month, number 1 MVE. I've got a few. As soon as I saw their list on that shit, I started doing plasma cuts for it because, why? Fuck them. I'm so going to get raided one day. Anyway, guys, let me get out of here because I'll hang out for the rest of the damn night. Ended as always. You perps be cool. Keep that thing on you at all times. And take care, man. Love your family. Do the best you can. No one's going to be perfect, but hey, at the very least, just try to make yourself better every other day, every day. Be as honest as you can. And we'll see you guys on the next one, man. You guys be careful out there. Have a good rest of the evening. I'm sure I'll see you guys in other chats tonight if I'm not on the road driving and doing other stuff, man. I love you guys. Be careful. Take care. Keep it on you. And we'll catch you guys on the next one, man. And keep track of John Lott, man. Look him up. He's a good dude. And if there's any way I could weasel my way into interviewing him, I'm going to try it. Of course, with my channel, he may not want to slum that low, but we'll see. Anyway, you guys be cool, man. I got to get out of here. Later.